Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Global Forbidden Land. Only I contract Konoha Genin. Chapter 61. In the wilderness outside the town. In a canyon, Genos and Tsuyu stand together. On the other side, stands Saitama. Saitama seemed to be a little puzzled, said, "Hey, Mr. Tsuyu, what are you and Genos doing?" Genos didn't speak, just looked at Tsuyu quietly. A slight smile appeared on the corner of Tsuyu's mouth. Of course he couldn't say that he just wanted to punch Genos. So, still say, of course it was to compete with Genos. I think Genos should be very happy. Genos nodded and said, "That's right, sparring is the best way to improve your strength, and..." Genos clenched his fists, his eyes gradually became sharper. "I also want to know how big the gap is between me and my brother." After the voice fell, the mechanical engine behind Genos roared instantly. There was a trace of a smile on the corner of Tsuyu's mouth. The battle suit outlines Tsuyu's strong body. In his hand, the black magic knife thousand blades slowly emerged. Gleaming black light, breath of thunder, a series of yellow lightning bolts were blessed on the thousand blades of the magic knife. "Genos, please," Tsuyu smiled lightly and said. Genos' eyes narrowed slightly, and then his body exploded instantly. A quarter of an hour later, Genos was lying on the ground, the pupils of his eyes seemed to diverge a little. Obviously, it is still a little unbelievable for everything just now. Tsuyu just stood quietly on the ground, with a smile still on the corner of his mouth. Tsuyu looked straight ahead. On the attribute bar, the progress bar of breaking the limit ability has already reached 35%. Obviously, after defeating Genos, the progress bar skyrocketed again. Tsuyu is very satisfied with this. Not only can you let out a bad breath, but you can also improve your own progress bar, so why not do it? Moreover, at this speed, the progress bar will soon reach 40. At that time, the improvement of strength can be accelerated again. Not bad. Saitama picked up Genos and complained to Tsuyu. "Mr. Tsuyu, your shot is too heavy. Let's see what Genos has done." Tsuyu shrugged his shoulders. Isn't this respect for Genos? If he doesn't go all out, Genos will definitely not be happy. Genos, who was lying on Saitama's shoulder, struggled and said, "Teacher, brother is right. If brother releases water, I will be unhappy instead. Being able to see the full strength of the senior brother also let me know where the gap between me and the senior brother is. I am very happy." Genos is still speaking for Tsuyu at this time. Saitama said helplessly, Okay, I see. Let's go back." Afterwards, Saitama carried Genos and returned to Saitama's home with Tsuyu. Fortunately, Genos' parts can repair themselves, so it was restored quickly. At this moment, Tsuyu started exercising again. Although until now, relying on exercise, the progress bar has improved very slowly, but the improvement of physical fitness is still very scary. Knowing that he would be targeted by someone, Tsuyu also felt a sense of crisis. You know, the ones who come now are only the heroes after the 10th S-level hero, and among the S-level heroes, there are still many with 7-star combat power. Not just the heroes, but also the guy from the Monster Association. Some dragon-level monsters are no worse than 7-star warriors. Therefore, you must step into the 6-star level earlier, and rely on the 8 inner gates to be able to compete against those strong players. Time passed slowly like this. Already a few days later, Genos came to Saitama's house again, looked at Saitama, who was playing games, and said, "Teacher, why are you still playing games?" Saitama turned his head and looked at Genos with a smile. "Genos, you are here again." Genos looked at Saitama seriously and said, "Teacher, haven't you been active these days?" Saitama froze for a moment. "What are the activities for?" At this time, Tsuyu came over and said with a smile, "AC level hero, if he is inactive for 10 days, his title of hero will be revoked, so, teacher, let's go for a walk and fight monsters along the way." Saitama's expression became distorted when he heard that. Mr. Tsuyu, why didn't you say it earlier?" Tsuyu shrugged. "I'm S rank, haven't you forgotten?" Saitama looked at Genos and Tsuyu. Suddenly felt the malice from the world. Among the three, 2 are S rank, and it seems that only he is C rank. However, the 2 S levels are his apprentices, and the master himself is just a small C level. Saitama quit immediately. He quickly put on his clothes, with an indomitable expression on his face. Go, let me go out to fight monsters as a teacher. Saitama clenched his fists, his face full of fighting spirit. Suyu and Genos looked at each other. Suyu had no choice but to put on his combat uniform and followed Saitama out. On the streets of the town, Saitama was walking feebly. Genos and Suyu were by his side. Saitama's face was full of loveless expression. Especially, Saitama looked at Genos and Suyu beside him. At this moment, the passers-by around saw Suyu and Genos, and they all exclaimed. Look, it turned out to be Genos who ranked 17th in the S rank. Originally, Genos should be 16, but because of Suyu's existence, Genos' ranking also moved one place towards the back. Ranked 17. Look, there is Suyu, the 10th ranked genius warrior. Wow, Suyu, I want to give birth to a monkey for you. Suyu was originally handsome even if he was tall, and Suyu is now the 10th ranked hero in the S level, so he is naturally welcomed by many people. Unexpectedly, when I came out today, I saw Suyu, a talented warrior. I must show it off when I go back. The three of them were walking on the street, with the flashing lights of their mobile phones flashing from time to time. Many people even ran over because of the cheers here, when they saw Genos and Suyu. It also showed an expression of ecstasy. Suyu-jun, I love you. It must be very safe to have Mr. Suyu in our town. Yeah, I heard that every S-level top 10 hero is capable of killing dragon-level monsters. Happiness is dead. Many people cheered. Few paid attention to Saitama at the center of the trio. But still some people saw the existence of Saitama. Who is this bald man? Why can he stand beside Genos and Suyu? That's right, don't pee and look in the mirror. Saitama's expression began to twist little by little. It's fine if you're not that famous, but you still have to be insulted by these people. Veins exploded on Saitama's smooth forehead. Suyu quickly pulled Saitama and comforted him. Teacher, don't be as knowledgeable as these people. After they know your strength, they will definitely admire you. It was Saitama who suppressed his anger, looked at Suyu suspiciously, and said. Really? Suyu smiled and said. Real. Genos on the side also echoed. Senior brother is right. The higher the hero's ranking, the greater the fame. Even the top 10 of the C level can have a little bit of fame. Look, teacher, if you don't believe me. Genos pointed to a middle-aged man wearing a tiger vest in front of him. Around him, there were also many people watching. But compared with Suyu Genos' side, it is obviously still a lot less. After all, Suyu and Genos are S-class heroes anyway, and the platoon is also very large. And at this time, the Vest Tiger also noticed the existence of Suyu and Genos, and came here to say hello. It turned out to be Genos and Mr. Suyu. I didn't expect characters like you to come out. The tiger in the vest smiled and said hello. But still ignore Saitama. Suyu and Genos nodded lightly. Suddenly, a sound of breaking through the air suddenly came. Accompanied by a man's soft voice sounded. Burst shuriken. Boom. The shuriken fell on the body of the tiger in the vest, and exploded in an instant, directly blasting the body of the tiger in the vest into black. The tiger in the vest didn't even have the slightest resistance, and fell directly to the ground. This change made the surrounding people start to exclaim. Ah, there is a weirdo. Look, where is it? All I saw was a young man standing quietly on top of a street lamp, with a coquettish purple cloak swaying in the breeze. Who is it if it's not Sonic? Sonic stared at Suyu on the ground with blazing eyes. Suyu, we meet again. The surrounding crowd began to evacuate, but fortunately, the presence of Suyu and Genos reduced the fear in the hearts of the crowd a lot. With Genos and Suyu here, what are we afraid of? Even if it's a dragon-level monster, with the cooperation of Suyu and Genos, it can't make any waves. Yes, Mr. Suyu is very powerful. The eyes of the crowd looking at Suyu and Genos seemed to be shining. That is the light of admiration. On top of the street lamp, Sonic jumped down, stood straight on the ground, and slowly drew out the sharp blade in his hand. The sharp blade shone brightly under the sunlight. Sonic walked towards Suyu step by step, with a grin on his face. After several days of devil training, this time, I will definitely be able to defeat you. Are you ready to die? Mr. Suyu. Sonic's voice sounded. but it drew insults from the masses. What are you, worthy of being compared with Mr. Tsuyu? That's right, Mr. Tsuyu is the 10th ranked S-class hero. Sonic glanced at the surrounding crowd and smiled disdainfully. A bunch of waste that needs the protection of heroes. Then his eyes shifted to Tsuyu's body, his eyes flickering. Mr. Tsuyu, today, either you die or I die. After the words fell, Saitama, who had been standing beside Genos and Tsuyu without any movement, rushed out suddenly. The speed was so fast that even Sonic couldn't react. Then he saw a red fist, and suddenly aimed at his crotch, and directly punched it out. Boom! The powerful force directly smashed Sonic into the air. Like a shooting star, it streaked across the sky. Disappear. Saitama put on a handsome pose, said. As heroes, it is our duty to protect the masses. Saitama closed his eyes, wanting to enjoy the cheers of the crowd, but what came was just a discussion. It's really boring to be robbed of Tsuyu-jun and Genos by a C-level hero. I still want to see Tsuyu-jun make a move. Yeah, this monster doesn't look very good. It's so boring that even a C-level hero can be easily defeated. Saitama's expression was incomparably silent. Obviously, it was done by myself. Why, I still receive such treatment. Saitama's expression began to contort. Seeing this, Tsuyu said quickly. Teacher, it must be because the masses don't know the strength of this monster, so they underestimated it, teacher. The main reason is that the teacher is a C-level hero in the eyes of everyone, and you solve the opponent so easily. So they will take it for granted that the monster is weak, that's why it's like this. Hearing Tsuyu's words, Saitama's face showed hope again. Is it really like this? Tsuyu looked at Saitama in this state, and at this moment he breathed a sigh of relief. Just now, he was afraid that Saitama would go berserk. Otherwise, no one on the entire planet can stop Saitama. And obviously, he was worrying too much. And at this moment, a voice rang on the three people's mobile phones. The hero sent to Z City to investigate asked for support. The golden ball of the 29th A-level hero fell into a state where he could not fight. Springbeard, the 33rd player in the same level, is also in a hard fight. The location is No Man's Street, please nearby heroes to support. There was a trace of haste in the voice. Tsuyu frowned slightly. Looking at Saitama, said, Teacher, your chance may have come. This monster is very likely to be close to a dragon-level monster. If the teacher takes action and eliminates him, the teacher's ranking will definitely be higher. Saitama's eyes lit up. Yes, if I can defeat this monster, my fame will come. It's not too late, let's go. With an excited expression on his face, Saitama pulled Tsuyu and rushed towards the location of No Man's Street. Genos also revs the engine and catches up. Soon, the three came to No Man's Street. On the uninhabited street, where is a monster with kelp all over his body standing. In front of the kelp monster was a middle-aged man in a green suit, and the sharp sword in his hand had begun to bend. His face was covered in embarrassing dust. It was the Springbeard who was ranked 33 in the A level. Springbeard and the kelp monster also noticed the three of Saitama. When he saw Genos and Tsuyu, the spring-bearded face showed joy. It turned out to be Tsuyu, who was ranked 10th in S rank, and Genos, who was 17th. Now, this monster can't get away. Springbeard breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, he almost couldn't hold on anymore. However, the arrival of Tsuyu and Genos now really cheered up Springbeard. The kelp monster looked at the three of them with a ferocious expression. Are there three more heroes here? This time, I will definitely be famous. The kelp monster grinned, and the kelp on its body suddenly killed the three of them. Springbeard let out a roar. Be careful, this monster's kelp tentacles are extremely hard, mine. Before the words fell, he saw that Saitama directly grabbed the kelp monster's tentacles and looked at it carefully. Hey, it seems that the seaweed sauce is missing at home, this one is not bad. Saitama pulled the kelp monster's tentacles directly, and even broke the kelp monster's tentacles. He took a bite. Bah, why is it so salty? Saitama said with some disgust. Tsuyu smiled helplessly, ignoring the shocked gazes of the Springbeard and the kelp monster, and said to Saitama. Teacher, don't you want to be famous? This monster has surpassed the tiger level and has the strength of a ghost level. If you defeat it, The teacher must be famous. Saitama's eyes lit up slightly. Yes, Mr. Tsuyu, Mr. Genos, you must not make a move, just leave it to me. Saying that, Saitama rushed towards the kelp monster in an instant. A terrifying power erupted from his body. In just a split second, less than a second, he came directly in front of the kelp monster. The speed was so fast that even the monster and the Springbeard didn't notice it at all. I want to be famous. Saitama roared loudly. The red fist smashed down instantly. Boom! The terrifying power exploded in an instant, wrapped in a powerful force. Under this force, the surrounding air exploded in an instant. Fell suddenly. The kelp monster collapsed directly under Saitama's fist. It turned into pieces of kelp and fell to the ground. Punch. No one on earth can take a punch from Saitama. Unless Sonic's balls. The spring-bearded face beside him twitched intermittently. Sweat dripped down Springbeard's face and fell to the ground. Okay, so strong. Springbeard knew the strength of this monster very well. Even if he tried his best, he would not be the opponent of this monster. And on the punch of this bald head, it collapsed directly. But at the same time, Springbeard had a doubt in his heart. I've never heard of a bald-headed S-rank hero. The soft voice of Springbeard was still heard by Saitama. Saitama looked at Springbeard with displeasure. This Tsuyu and Genos came over. Springbeard straightened his chest and said to Tsuyu and Genos, I've seen two S-class heroes. Tsuyu nodded slightly. Then he left with Saitama. The next day, on the TV news, a message came. Yesterday, a ghost-level monster fell in the hands of S-level heroes Tsuyu, Genos, and AC-level hero. Saitama looked at this piece of news, and his face became even weirder. Didn't he kill himself? What about Tsuyu? Saitama turned his head to look at Tsuyu, who was exercising, and fell into silence. Woo! Accompanied by bursts of harsh sirens sounded. The entire city of Z began to wake up. And at this moment, Saitama's home. Tsuyu, who was exercising, stopped exercising. At this moment, Tsuyu's physical fitness has also undergone extremely terrifying changes during the constant exercise. It is even vaguely about to reach the peak of 5 stars. Just a little bit, he could be promoted to 6 stars. When that time comes, it's time for Tsuyu to challenge all the S-class heroes. However, the harsh siren at this time made Tsuyu stop exercising, and then walk to the balcony. There, Saitama was already standing on the balcony. At this time, a hurried voice sounded on the radio in Z City. A huge meteorite suddenly appeared in City Z, and the current danger level is tentatively set at Dragon level. Please evacuate quickly. Please evacuate quickly. I'm saying it again, please evacuate as soon as possible. During the broadcast, urgent voices kept ringing. And the mobile phones on Saitama and Tsuyu also rang one after another. The nearby S-level heroes please hurry to Z City, and the heroes below S-level help maintain the retreat order. A hurried voice came from the phone. Meteorite. Tsuyu froze for a moment, then looked up at the sky. What I saw was a huge meteorite, emitting light, rushing towards the location of City Z. The speed is so fast that it directly exceeds the speed of light. And, on the meteorite, there was an extremely terrifying and fiery fluctuation. Like a fireball, Tsuyu's eyes couldn't help but narrow slightly. Meteorite. Moreover, looking at the sky, this meteorite is thousands of meters in size. If it lands, maybe the entire city of Z will be destroyed. Tsuyu couldn't help but looked at Saitama beside him. At this moment, the red light illuminated Saitama's face flushed. There was no expression on Saitama's face. Tsuyu couldn't help sighing and said, Teacher, I'll go first. Saitama nodded, then smiled a little. Mr. Tsuyu, you must be careful. Tsuyu froze for a moment, then smiled, and jumped out in one step, at the speed of flash, and burst out in an instant. Like a flash of yellow lightning, it rushed out in an instant. The speed directly reached 4 times the speed of sound. Tsuyu came to a building and stopped slowly. Above the sky, the meteorite looks bigger and bigger. Reflected in Tsuyu's pupils. The entire huge Z city seemed to be covered with layers of red halos, and the surrounding air seemed to become hotter with the falling of the meteorite. At this time, a huge robot rushed out. Tsuyu's expression froze slightly. Metal Knight. All I saw was shells ejected from the Metal Knight's body, and the violent bombs fell on the meteorite in an instant and exploded in an instant. The violent energy shook the meteorite, but after the explosion, there was no reaction at all. It seems that the strength is still not enough. Metal Knight said lightly. Metal Knight's eyes noticed Suyu's existence. Oh, newcomer. Suyu looked at the Metal Knight. According to the temper of the Metal Knight in the original book, this person is not such a good person. This time, I came here purely to test my own weapons. Therefore, in Suyu's heart, he did not have the slightest affection for the Metal Knight. So I just said a light sentence, but there was no more to say. At this time, Genos also rushed over. Metal Knight also prepared to leave without the slightest nostalgia, but was stopped by Genos. Wait, as an S-class hero, why did you leave? Metal Knight turned around, looked at the innocent Genos, and sneered. Rookie, the meteorite is not something we can contend with. From the moment it landed, it was already doomed, the destruction of City Z. If you stay here, you will only die. There is no other result other than that. I'm talking. Z City, what's the matter with me? The Metal Knight's indifferent voice made Genos' expression change slightly. He really couldn't imagine that, as the top 10 Metal Knights in the S rank, he would say such a thing. It is simply incomprehensible. Suyu patted Genos on the shoulder and said. Everyone has their own reasons, just be ourselves, we can't control others. But, Genos seemed to want to say something more. But seeing Suyu shaking his head, he swallowed the words that had come to his mouth. Metal Knight sneered and chose to leave directly. Cough cough cough. Young man, you are still so passionate. The two looked back and saw a gray-haired old man walking over step by step with his body bent. Suyu's eyes narrowed slightly. But the third-ranked Silver Fang among the S ranks, Bangu. It's not bad for two newcomers to have such awareness. Bangu raised his head slowly, and a gleam of light flashed in his cloudy eyes. However, such a meteorite is not something you can shake. Bangu said lightly. Genos was the first to refuse to accept it. Even if you can't shake it, you have to give it a try. It's better than being a salted fish. As he said that, the engine all over his body exploded instantly. The blue energy spar erupted with bright light, and at this moment, Genos' engine was driven to ultimate. Crush me, Genos yelled loudly, and a terrifying energy column rushed towards the meteorite above the sky in an instant. The terrifying energy is even more terrifying than the power of the Metal Knight before. Even this silver-fanged Bangu couldn't help but flicker slightly in his eyes. However, after the energy beam, the meteorite, still unscathed, continued to rush towards Z City with terrifying power. Genos sat slumped on the ground, his eyes glazed over. Could it be? Is there really no other way? Is there really no other way? Genos sat slumped on the ground, his mechanical eyes had lost their luster. Looking at the huge meteorite above the sky, the brain calculated rapidly. There are 33 seconds left, and the meteorite is about to fall. But the people in City Z haven't evacuated at all. Genos murmured, his voice trembling slightly, even revealed a trace of fear. When such a terrifying meteorite falls, the entire city of Z will be turned into ruins. Thousands of lives will be lost in this crisis. Janos's mechanical eye has no brilliance, what it has, it's just, that incomparably dim. It's over, it's hopeless. Janos' voice was full of regret, even sadness. This kind of natural disaster, human power, appears so helpless in this kind of disaster. Not even, powerless, no way, to be honest, meteorites are things that no one can think of, and no one can even compete. Unless, that person's power has reached some kind of extremely terrifying power level. Da da da. The sound of crisp footsteps resounded slowly. Genos and Suyu looked behind. Instead, he saw Mr. Bangu walking slowly with his back drawn. Bangu's old voice sounded slowly. Oh, young man, let's go quickly. 7 inches. Such a meteorite is not something you can contend with. Bangu's beard kept shaking, and he spoke quickly in his mouth. With his eyes, he looked towards the meteorite on the sky. The fiery light shone on the face of Mr. Bang Gu. Under such light, even the slightest wrinkles on Mr. Bangu's face can be clearly seen. Suyu couldn't help being moved. What does this old man want to do? Bangu turned his head slowly, looked at the two of them, and said lightly. I have lived in this city for a long time, and I have been here all my life. Now, With the fall of this meteorite, it seems that this city is about to be turned into ruins. I can't bear it. There was a trace of vicissitudes in Bangu's old voice. It seems to be missing something. It seems to be missing something. Suddenly, Bangu's upper body exploded. Even the clothes were blown to pieces in an instant. At this moment, the originally hunched body unexpectedly became extremely tall and straight, and the perfect muscle lines on his body were directly outlined. A surge of majestic energy burst out from Bangu's body. Rao was Suyu. Staring at the power in Bangu's body, it seemed that he couldn't help shivering. As expected of the third-ranked existence among S-class heroes, Suyu couldn't help sighing, looking deeply at Bangu. As the third-ranked existence among S-level heroes, Bangu's combat power is naturally extremely terrifying. Even above Atomic Warrior and Metal Knight, those that can surpass Bangu are tornadoes and blasters. But these two are not ordinary human beings. But Bangu is different. Bangu is a complete human warrior. Being able to achieve such an achievement is entirely dependent on the unremitting training of Bangu alone. Only then has such terrifying combat power as it is today. TB. Suyu looked at Bangu's fist, and saw that there seemed to be streaks of blue energy on Bangu's fist, which began to emerge. Energy, like the water waves, is extremely smooth. But under that smoothness, there is an extremely terrifying crisis hidden. At the same time, the Sharingan in Suyu's eyes turned wildly. Copy ability, direct activation. If Suyu remembers correctly, this starting style, it should be the opening move of the flowing water breaking rock fist. This, the stunt for which Bangu is famous. Today, it will be shown in front of myself. Originally, Suyu decided to go to challenge the hero after he was promoted to 6-star warrior, but he didn't expect that because of the existence of a meteorite, he would meet Bangu Ren. With the defeat of Genos and Metal Knight, Mr. Bang Jiu is also ready to make a move. But, Suyu couldn't help looking in another direction. There, a bald young man in yellow clothes and a white cloak could be vaguely seen, happily dispersing the crowd, and he didn't seem to notice the meteorite that hadn't landed. Suyu's eyes couldn't help becoming serious. According to the plot, shouldn't it be the meteorite crushed by Saitama? Could it be because of Bangu's crushing meteorite? So Saitama is not going to make a move. Questions began to circulate in Suyu's mind. But obviously, now is not the time to think about these things. At this time, what should be faced is that extremely terrifying meteorite. Suyu looked at Grandpa Bang, Sharingan turned wildly, and began to copy the fist of flowing water and breaking rock. If he could copy Bangu's flowing water breaking rock fist, his combat power would also be greatly improved. Maybe he can be promoted to a 6-star warrior. Once promoted to a 6-star warrior, Suyu's combat power can also be greatly improved, and relying on the 8 inner gates, he can even have the combat power of a 7-star warrior. As for the 7-star martial artist known as the Grandmaster, the combat power is obviously extremely terrifying. All I saw was that Bangu's knees were slowly bending, and the gestures in his hands were constantly changing. It is as smooth as lake water. But the surrounding air, under Bangu's fist, began to burst into the air bit by bit. Genos on the side stared at Bangu. Flowing water breaking rock fist. If Mr. Bang Jiu took action, this meteorite might be able to be completely shattered. Perhaps, there is still hope. Genos' eyes once again burst into light. It seems to see hope again. Drink. Suddenly, the two of them heard a burst of shouting, and then they could see that Bangu's body rushed out like a cannonball. The speed is so fast that it directly surpasses the speed of sound. Although it is not as fast as Flash, it has already surpassed Sonic's speed. After all, it is still the top 3 heroes of S rank. Suyu couldn't help sighing, but his eyes were fixed on Bangu's body, and the Sharingan kept turning. As the 3rd hero of S rank, Bangu's strength has long been at the level of a 7-star warrior. At this level, it will take a lot of time for their skills to be replicated. In a short period of time, it cannot be copied at all. Copying Flash's speed before was also because Flash's strength hadn't fully reached the 7-star level. At most, it can only be regarded as the 6-star peak level. But Bang Jiu is different, he is a genuine 7-star master. Bangu's body looked extremely small under that hot meteorite. Wisps of blue energy began to emerge from Bangu's hands. It's as smooth as water. Then, Bangu's fist snapped out. A series of fist lights exploded in the sky in an instant. The speed was so fast that even Tsuyu, who had turned on the Sharingan, could hardly see clearly. Flowing water, crushing rock fist. Bangu roared angrily, and the power in his body, at this moment, was urged to an ultimate state, terrifying energy. In an instant, it burst out from Bangu's fist. The densely packed fist lights exploded in an instant. With a violent offensive, the surrounding air seemed to be dying under Bangu's fist. Around, a vacuum zone is directly formed. Flowing water is ruthless, and Gu's fist is also ruthless. Boom! Countless fist lights suddenly exploded towards the huge meteorite. Every punch releases terrifying power. Under this force, the speed of that huge meteorite actually started to slow down. In Janos' mechanical eyes, light burst out again. It works. The speed of the meteorite has begun to weaken. It was originally expected to take 33 seconds, but now it will take at least 50 seconds. If it can continue to output, it is very likely that this meteorite exploded before it touched the ground. The computer chip in Janos' brain began to calculate frantically. But obviously, Genos has overlooked an extremely important issue. That is whether Bangu can output such a high intensity. In Tsuyu's eyes, the 3-Tomo Sharingan has been urged to ultimate by Tsuyu, and it can be vaguely seen that the 3-Tomo Sharingan has begun to be covered with bloodshot eyes. At this moment, Tsuyu's mental power was urged to the ultimate state. Even the skin around the eye sockets began to become distorted bit by bit. No, not right. Tsuyu shook his head, his face began to be full of seriousness. Genos on the side heard it, was stunned, and asked, "Brother, what's wrong?" Genos was full of doubts. According to my own calculations, this meteorite, under Bangu's continuous attacks, will sooner or later be unable to withstand it, and thus shatter. Why, Tsuyu would say, is something wrong? Tsuyu's eyes were extremely dignified, staring at Bangu above the sky, his voice was unprecedentedly dignified. Look carefully at Bangu's body reaction. Hearing Tsuyu's words, Genos looked at Bangu under the meteorite. Beneath the huge meteorite, Bangu's body seems so small. It's like an elephant facing an ant. But the magnification function in the eyes allows Genos to see clearly. Suddenly, Janos' body trembled slightly. Because, he sees, Bong Ji-yu is already panting. Facing such a terrifying meteorite, even Bangu, who is ranked third among the S-level heroes, seemed a little struggling at this moment. Seeing this, Janos couldn't help swallowing, and the expression on his face began to waver. Brother, Mr. Bangu seems to be unable to hold on anymore. Tsuyu's expression was solemn. This is what Tsuyu is most worried about. It's true that Bangu is very strong, but it's not the time for Bangu to be young and vigorous. At this moment, Bangu's physical fitness is not as good as when he was young. All the cells in my body started to wither. If such a terrifying power erupts, it can be done. But obviously, if you want to continuously output such terrifying power, even Bang Ji-yu, they may not be able to bear it. Wow, sure enough, after Genos' voice fell, blood mist began to explode on Bangu's body. The blood mist slowly drifted down, low to the ground. At this moment, Bangu's physical strength has reached ultimate. If the output continues, Bangu's physical body will soon be unable to bear it. Even, it is not impossible to fall directly under such a berserk force. As for the meteorite on the sky, although its speed has been slowed down, it still hasn't shattered. Above the sky, Bangu's heart was full of bitterness. Is there really no other way? Bangu felt helpless. Although my own strength is terrifying, and I can even reverse the speed of the meteorite, but if I want to crush the meteorite, I still need my own continuous output. But now, it is no longer his heyday. If he was in his heyday, maybe he could crush the meteorite, but now, just slowing down the speed of the meteorite is already extremely difficult. Well, Bangu sighed and pulled out his last ounce of strength. With a punch, it hit the meteorite. Boom! Accompanied by bursts of muffled sounds, Bangu's body suddenly hit the ground. At this moment, Bangu's eyes were bitter. I have protected this city all my life, but now, I can't protect this city anymore. Facing the meteorite of terrible disaster, this city is about to be destroyed. I don't know why, Bangu began to show a look of unwillingness in his heart. Suddenly, a white figure flashed across in an instant. He hugged the falling Bangu, slowly landed on the tall building, and gently placed Bangu on the ground. Bangu's eyes moved slightly, looking at the young man in white combat uniform in front of him. Suyu, Bangu whispered softly. His voice was soft, and after using the last of his strength, Bunji's voice began to sound like a mosquito. Extremely light, Suyu replied softly. Standing on the tall building, at this moment, among the three S-class heroes, only Suyu is left with fighting power. Bangu's strength has been exhausted. If Suyu hadn't made a timely move, Bangu might have fallen to the ground at this time and turned into a pulp. And the parts of Genos' whole body also began to be damaged. Even above the body, strands of black gunpowder smoke began to rise. Bangu smiled bitterly. Really, there is no hope. Suyu stood quietly on the tall building. The violent hurricane blew Suyu's body, but it didn't shake Suyu's body in the slightest. Suyu's soft voice sounded, making Genos and Bangu stunned. Yes, there is still hope. No matter how the two of them thought about it, it was impossible for them to think of anyone else who could appear and deal with this meteorite. Is it a tornado? A gleam of light flashed in Bangu's cloudy eyes. If it is a tornado, there is really hope. The ability of the tornado is specially designed to restrain this meteorite. But the tornado is not in Z City now. Now among the S-level heroes in Z City, only myself is left, and now, as the strongest, I have no fighting power. How can I shake this meteorite? Could it be? Bangu couldn't help looking at Suyu. This is Suyu, who is called a genius warrior. Is there any way he can do it? Bangu couldn't help shaking his head. I have seen Suyu's test scores. According to Suyu's combat power during the exam, although he is very strong and has the range of an S-level hero, he wants to shake the meteorite. Obviously there is still no hope. In Bangu's mind, each thought did not flash. No matter what Bangu thought, he never thought that there was any other way to crush this meteorite. But now, the meteorite is getting closer and closer to the location of City Z. 20 seconds left. Genos kept counting, calculating the time for the meteorite to fall. Every time the count was counted, Genos' voice became trembling. With such a terrifying meteorite, there is really no hope for City Z. Bangu sighed, looking at Suyu, who was standing straight on the tall building like a bamboo pole, couldn't help but said. Suyu, you are still young, and you still have time. Take Genos and go first. For ordinary people, it is obviously impossible to dodge in 20 seconds, but for S-level heroes, it is completely possible to dodge the falling meteorite. Suyu is still young and still has hope. Once Suyu grows up, he can even surpass himself. The Hero Association can also produce more powerful heroes. Therefore, there is no need to die here with this old man. At this time, the corner of Suyu's mouth couldn't help revealing a slight smile. In the attribute column that only Suyu can see, surprisingly, there is one more ability. Flowing Water Breaking Rock Fist. Belongs to the skills of the third hero of the S-class, Bang Ji-yu. This moment was completely copied by Suyu. With the copying of this skill, Suyu's physical fitness also underwent a terrifying change. Boom! A terrifying aura burst out from Suyu's body. Beyond, arrived straight away, 6-star warrior. At this moment, you finally broke through Luxing Wujian. Suyu raised his head slowly, his eyes bright. Step by step, Suyu walked towards the falling meteorite from the sky. Accompanied by Genos' bitter report. 10 seconds left. The meteorite was infinitely close to City Z. The terrifying power set off waves of storms, and some buildings even began to crack one after another. The power of ultimate even made some people feel a little short of breath. Bangu and Genos looked at the young man in white combat uniform in front of them. Then a soft voice was heard. 8 inner gates, the rich gates are open. At this moment, the terrifying power instantly exploded. That white figure stood there quietly, and the terrifying aura emanating from it was actually comparable to that of a meteorite. Open the door, accompanied by a soft voice sounded. A force comparable to the meteorite above the sky burst out from Suyu's body instantly. The terrifying power even made the surrounding space unbearably distorted bit by bit. The power of ultimate directly set off gusts of wind in the surrounding area. Suddenly swept out, like a storm, it poured down. Boom boom boom. Around Suyu, there seemed to be one after another roaring and exploding sounds. The eyes of Genos and Mr. Bangu couldn't help but tremble, looking in horror at the young man in the white combat uniform ahead. This young man in white, at this moment, unexpectedly displayed such terrifying fighting power. The wrinkles on Bangu's face began to fluctuate. Even the pupil couldn't help shaking. This power, so terrifying. At this moment, Suyu's skin began to faintly show signs of redness. But hesitating Suyu's physique, that is Uzumaki Naruto's physique, the recovery power is extremely terrifying. Therefore, even if the Jingmun was opened, the damage caused to Suyu was quickly repaired. In addition, today's Suyu has the ability to break the limit. With this ability, Jingmun's damage does not appear to be so serious. Even, lightly, I felt a burst of full power coming from my body. Suyu couldn't help clenching his fists. He raised his head and looked down at the sky. The meteorite above the sky finally revealed his true face at this time. Huge. Yes, it can only be described as huge. There are thousands of meters of meteorites, wrapped in terrifying energy, even the Bangu can't break them. 182. In Suyu's eyes, there was a flash of light. A smile formed on the corner of his mouth. Slowly raised his hand, outlining a series of blue energy fluctuations. Raising the hand, it is the flowing water breaking rock fist. Bangu, who was lying on the ground, couldn't help but his pupils shook again. Others may not be very clear about it, but as the founder of flowing water breaking rock fist, Bangu is extremely relaxed. I don't know how many times Bangu has played this hand-raising gesture. Even if there is a slight change, it can be easily seen. What's more, what Suyu copied is still the original Bangu's flowing water breaking rock fist. Under Sharingan's copy, no action details change. Therefore, what Suyu played was completely Wang Bangu's flowing water breaking rock fist. Not even the slightest change. Faint blue fluctuations burst out from Suyu's hands. After being promoted to a 6-star martial artist, and with Jingmun opened, Suyu's combat power has temporarily reached the level of a 7-star martial artist master. The power is dozens of times higher than before. This is the gap between the 7 stars and the 6 stars. Then, breathe water. In an instant, Suyu added many blessings to himself. Terrifying power burst out from Suyu's fist. Immediately afterwards, an extremely terrifying wave burst out from Suyu's fist. Under this force, the space seemed to be slightly distorted. Boom. Then, Suyu's fist suddenly hit the sky. In an instant, 2 extremely powerful forces exploded above the sky. A nervous look began to appear on Yano's face. Does it work? Not only Genos became nervous, but even Bangu next to him couldn't help showing a nervous expression. At this moment, under the meteorite, Bangudu even forgot that Suyu was able to replicate his skills. Boom. Accompanied by bursts of terrifying power, the catharsis came. There was a sudden explosion. In the eyes of the two, the meteorite, which was several thousand meters in size, exploded instantly on top of Suyu's fist. It turned into tiny stones and fell down one after another. Although it still caused irreversible damage to City Z, it was much lighter than the trauma of the entire meteorite falling before. The two people lying on the tall building finally couldn't help but relax from their tense mood. It's finally over. Genos' strength, as if at this moment, was used up. The parts of the whole body were directly paralyzed. Bangu also lay quietly on the ground with an extremely relaxed face. But his gaze was still fixed on that white figure. This kid, the future belongs to their young people after all. Bangu laughed, but he didn't have the strength to stand up again. Suyu slowly landed on the upper floors. His face was calm, but if you carefully observe the corners of Suyu's mouth, you can clearly find that the corners of Suyu's mouth actually have a trace of smile. And on the other side, the edge of City Z. A young man with a bald head quietly looked at the young man in white on the tall building with a smile on his face. Suyu-jun, you did a good job. Saitama smiled. The clenched fist also relaxed at this moment. It seems that I don't need to make a move. Saitama looked around at some of the ruined cities. Although there is still damage, it is already very good. At least, Saitama doesn't think that he can do better than Suyu with his own shots. I can also smash that meteorite, but in the same way, I can't catch all the scattered small fragments. 0. Seeking flowers. There are not many who can do this. Saitama turned around slowly, and walked towards his home. With the resolution of the meteorite crisis, the residents of City Z no longer need to escape. It's just that some destroyed buildings still need a long period of repair before they can return to their previous appearance. But overall, it's pretty good. A few days later, Saitama's home. Tsuyu was still exercising constantly. Genos and Saitama sat on the ground, watching the reports from the TV news. Due to the meteorite attack, City Z suffered major damage. Fortunately, the S-level hero and genius warrior Tsuyu's shot prevented the greatest damage. Listening to the report on the TV news, Tsuyu was not moved at all, because at this moment, Tsuyu's attention was on the attribute bar that only he could see. Where, the ability to break the limit is already 40%. And what brought Tsuyu such a big improvement was obviously because of his smashing of the meteorite before. It was supposed to be Saitama's shot, but it turned out to be himself. Instead, a better progress bar was added. 40% was reached directly. The improvement brought to Tsuyu is even more terrifying. After Tsuyu was promoted to a 6-star warrior, he even opened the 6th gate, Jingmun, and was able to elevate his strength to the level of a 7-star warrior for a short time. Such a terrifying improvement can only be achieved by Tsuyu. And at this time, Tsuyu also officially has the capital to compete with those top 10 S-level heroes. Tsuyu finished today's exercise, stood up, and outlined the perfect muscle lines on his body. Mr. Tsuyu, your current fame has improved again. I'm so envious. Saitama cast an envious look at Tsuyu. Tsuyu smiled and said, fame or something, I have never cared about it, but it is also a good choice to reduce the harm of residents. Although this is in the forbidden area of One Punch, isn't the situation of One Punch similar to the real world outside? People are attacked by monsters, and heroes come forward. And outside, when people were attacked by fierce beasts, warriors stepped forward. Everything is so similar. Therefore, when facing the meteorite, Tsuyu chose to face it. Instead of doing things in one's own way like Metal Knight. Even if the entire city of Z was destroyed under the meteorite, it would not cause him the slightest discomfort. It can be said that even if the entire One Punch secret realm is destroyed, Tsuyu's image is not so obvious. After all, for Tsuyu, One Punch is a place for experience. Square, it's just a place to improve your combat power. For the rest, for Tsuyu, there is no fetter at all. At most, they were forced to go out ahead of time. But Tsuyu still chose to face it. Because, in reality, Suning's world was attacked by fierce beasts, so when facing disasters, even monsters, Tsuyu even chose to shoot. Only in this way can Tsuyu's heart calm down a little. Because, that is my own consciousness. Saitama shook his head and said with a smile. Now, I'm afraid that the people in the entire city of Z, your voice may have reached a peak. I'm so envious. Saitama revealed an envious look. It seems that I yearn for such a feeling very much. Tsuyu just smiled and didn't speak. In front of Saitama, Tsuyu will not have any pride. Because Tsuyu knew that the man in front of him existed without any restrictions. And without any restrictions, it means that no one can beat Saitama's opponent. So, as long as Saitama thinks, anything can be done. The reason why this is not the case is entirely because Saitama is honest in his heart and doesn't care too much about these things. Genos on the side also spoke slowly. Senior brother Tsuyu's strength is indeed terrifying, even Mr. Bang Jiyu is full of praise for his senior. On Genos's cold and arrogant face, a trace of other expressions rarely appeared. Grandpa Bang said that even in his peak period, he may not have such a terrifying combat power as his senior brother. Genos turned his head, looked at Tsuyu, and said seriously, Brother, I will definitely surpass you. Tsuyu smiled, but did not speak. However, Mr. Tsuyu should not go out these few days. Saitama said to Tsuyu. Tsuyu froze for a moment, then asked, What's wrong? Saitama pointed out the window and said, Mr. Tsuyu, your fame has reached a peak in City Z, look out the window, many people already know that you live with me. Tsuyu looked out of the window, and then saw that outside the window, a dense crowd had already gathered. More, that is, those girls. Especially adolescent girls. They looked at the location of Saitama's house in a craving, and kept shouting. Tsuyu, I will give you a monkey. Tsuyu, I love you, you are so handsome. Tsuyu, you are the strongest hero. There are countless words like this. It's all about Tsuyu's fanaticism. So, Mr. Suyu should not go out these few days. Saitama patted Suyu's shoulder and said with a sigh. That is, the supermarket was discounted a few days ago, and I stocked up a lot of supplies from the supermarket, otherwise, our current refrigerator would be empty. Saitama showed an expression that he had learned from the past. Suyu nodded. According to the current trend, if I go out, even if I want to move a few meters, it will take at least a few hours. People, there are just too many. It's almost impossible to see the end at a glance. Of course, if Suyu wants to go out, there are 10,000 ways. It's just that when someone is free to go shopping, they use flying. Suyu regained his position. Since you won't be able to go out for a few days, let's take a good exercise to stabilize your realm. Although he has been promoted to the level of a 6-star martial artist, the progress bar is also up to 4%. Therefore, the improvement of Suyu by exercise is quite obvious. But the distance between being promoted from 6 stars to 7 stars is very long. According to the current progress, it will take at least 1 or 2 months. As for the time limit of the one-punch forbidden zone, there is only half a month left, and Suyu is still planning to be promoted to a 7-star warrior before going out. Therefore, the next step is to improve the progress bar properly. Only when the progress bar is raised can Suyu's combat power be improved faster. The way to increase the progress bar is very simple. It's nothing more than exercising, challenging heroes, and changing the plot. Like Sonic and Meteor this time around, there was even the time of the hero exam. 3 times, the progress chart has skyrocketed by more than 10 points in total. Saitama and Genos sat back on the bench and their fun began. Game console. Saitama asked Suyu while playing games with Genos. Mr. Suyu, what are your plans for the future? Suyu was doing push-ups, thought for a while, and then said. It should be to challenge those heroes. Challenge a hero. Hey, why, Mr. Suyu, your current strength is already terrifying. These things are no longer useful to you. Saitama stopped playing the game and looked at Suyu. Genos also looked at Suyu. Some puzzled, because, according to Suyu's current strength, he shouldn't care about these things. After all, as long as Suyu thinks, the top 5 of S level must have the top 5 levels. As for the first 3, it obviously still needs a certain degree of difficulty. Suyu wouldn't say that he just increased the progress bar and copied skills, he just typed a haha and said. Hey, Teacher Genos, don't you think that challenging them is also a kind of improvement for your own practice? Saitama was thoughtful, but Genos said with an excited face. Brother Suyu is right, only by challenging the masters can one improve oneself. Senior brother Suyu pointed out a clear path for me, and I have decided, senior brother. I want to challenge the heroes of the world with you. Genos's mechanical face couldn't help turning slightly rosy. It seems that I have seen the appearance of my own experience promotion. Suyu took a deep look at Genos. In fact, for Genos, the improvement of strength is very simple, that is, to continue to transform and upgrade himself. Other than that, there is no other way. But obviously, Genos at this time has not realized it yet. This is the flaw of being a reformer. Of course, there are some things that you have to realize by yourself, and it is impossible for Suyu to explain everything clearly. Saitama turned around and looked at Suyu with deep eyes, but didn't say anything. He just looked at Suyu quietly. Suyu also noticed Saitama's gaze, but when Suyu looked over, Saitama showed the previous cynical expression again. That's good, Mr. Suyu, challenging heroes is also a way to improve yourself, I support you. Suyu was a little puzzled, but didn't think much, and nodded with a smile. Saitama rubbed his chin, said. Then when do we start? I'm afraid it's not easy to go out now. Saitama said, is the overcrowded situation outside. In this regard, Yin-Yu also has some headaches. Then wait a few more days, simply, I will take a good rest these few days. Although it is about rest, it is impossible for Suyu to rest. The speed of improvement in One Punch is so fast, so I don't rush to improve myself as much as possible. In the next few days, Suyu kept exercising. Genos didn't leave either, still staying in Saitama's room. In a few days, the progress bar of breaking the limit ability also successfully reached 48%. 2% improvement every day. Within 4 days, Suyu also successfully stabilized his realm to the 6-star level. It is vaguely developing towards the mid-6-star stage. This speed is simply terrifying. After all, if an ordinary 6-star martial artist has just been promoted, it will not take a month or two to stabilize, and it is impossible to do so. As for Suyu, under the influence of the ability to break the limit, he has stabilized. In the early morning, the sun swayed down gently. Suyu slowly opened his eyes, and a ray of light burst out from Suyu's eyes. Above the agitated void. Then, Insa stood up. At this moment, the crowd outside the door has been greatly reduced. After all, many people still have their own things to do. When the heat decreased, naturally some people left. But even so, there are still so many people outside the door. The three looked at each other and smiled. Then, let's start today. Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Global Forbidden Land. Only I contract Konoha Genin. Chapter 66. For the choice of heroes, Suyu also has his own judgment. First of all, it can't be Drive Knight and Metal Knight anymore. Because these two are totally robots. Like Genos, he is a reformer. Of course, Metal Knight is not a human being, his ability is to create all kinds of terrifying robots. But these skills are of no use to Suyu. Therefore, when choosing, Suyu directly excluded the two of them. And the S-level heroes, including Suyu, are only 18. Among them, Genos, Drive Knight, and Metal Knight cannot be copied. Because, there is no use at all, and it cannot be copied. Therefore, there are only 14 heroes left. Grandfather Bang and Flash Flash have been copied. There were only 12 left. Moreover, among the 12 S-level heroes, there are also some who are not too strong, and there is no need to copy those. Just like the sexy prisoner, the metal baseball, and the venerable vest, these three were directly excluded by Suyu. In particular, there is also a 6th-ranked king, and that guy's record is entirely made by Saitama. Completely, just an ordinary person. It's useless at all. So, for the rest, Suyu already has candidates. Superalloy Black Light. Although he was defeated by the evil wolf who was the apprentice of Mr. Bang, the evil wolf was able to defeat the Superalloy Black Light because of his willpower. However, in terms of strength, the Superalloy Black Light is still more terrifying than the Unicorn Immortal. If relying on the strength of the physical body, the physical strength of the Superalloy Black Light can still surpass many S-level heroes. Therefore, Suyu chose the Superalloy Black Light for his first stop. With an idea, Suyu walked directly towards the position of the Superalloy Black Light. Soon, under the full effort of the three of them, they found the Superalloy Black Light. At this moment, the Superalloy Black Light is in a gymnasium. When he was young, he was not a very powerful man. To be honest, even joining the Heroes Association is just to prove your physical body. During the battle, he didn't have the consciousness of going all out. This is the reason why he was defeated by the evil wolf later. Otherwise, the wolf before it turned into a monster is no match for the Super Black Gold Black Light. After learning about Suyu's intentions, Chaohei Jinhe Guang readily agreed. He knows Suyu. They also know that Suyu's physical body is extremely powerful, and can even withstand the falling meteorite. However, the Super Black Gold Black Light is still extremely confident about its own body. After all, in just 15 minutes, a man who can defeat a virtualized unicorn. Even in the face of dragon-level monsters, they can have the power to fight. Nature is also incomparably powerful. Soon, several people came to a venue. In this venue, Suyu saw a familiar figure. He is indeed Mr. Bang Ji-yu. The old man's resilience is quite terrifying. Although he is old, his physical strength cannot be underestimated. In just a few days, the physical damage was recovered. The old man and Saitama Genos sat on the edge of the venue, looking at them. Genos, do you think Suyu and Super Black Gold Black Light are better than each other? Bangu suddenly asked Genos. Janos stroked his chin, making serious judgments. Senior brother's strength has already surpassed you, old man, and the Superalloy Black Light's combat power is also extremely terrifying. This battle is really hard to say. Although it is said that the Superalloy Black Light is only ranked 11th, and Bangu is already the third hero. But as we all know, the ranking of the Hero Association has never been of much use. In addition to the first and second, even Bangu, who is the third, still has a lot of moisture. Therefore, if ranking is used to determine the strength of strength, it is a big mistake. But obviously, it is impossible for Genos to make such a mistake. Bangu nodded, although in the words of 363, Genos, there was a meaning of belittling himself. But Bang Ji-yu, who has already experienced many things, will not pay attention to these. More, Bang Jili is still placed on Su-yu's body. After all, Bangu has cared about this kid for a long time. Especially, after watching Su-yu copy his flowing water breaking rock fist, Bangu became more interested in Su-yu. Looking at the two people in the huge venue, Bangu narrowed his eyes, and an old voice came out. This battle, Su-yu won. Genos and Saitama looked at Bangu in surprise, wondering why Bangu was so confident. The strength of Superalloy Black Light is not weak. At least, one with dragon-level combat power. Saitama, on the other hand, glanced at Bangu with interest. Bangu explained, the combat power of Superalloy Black Light is terrifying, I know this, and even among S-level heroes, their hard power can rank among the top 5. But the Superalloy Black Light has a fatal flaw. He doesn't have the confidence to move forward. Bang Ji-yu gets more and more exalted. But Su-yu is different. Even in the face of meteorites, he can still sacrifice his life and forget himself. This kind of momentum cannot be resisted by the Superalloy Black Light. Bangu's explanation made Genos couldn't help but nodded. There is nothing wrong with this analysis. Bangu looked deeply at Su-yu in the arena, and there were some words that he didn't say. In fact, Su-yu under the meteorite has surpassed himself in battle power. Bang Ji-yu narrowed his eyes slightly, staring at Su-yu firmly, and kept murmuring. I don't know, this time, can you give me another surprise? With the sound of Bangu's voice, the battle in the stadium exploded in an instant. A black flash rushed out crazily. The speed is so fast that it is infinitely close to the level of the speed of sound. But this speed is really too slow for Su-yu today. Especially, Su-yu has mastered the speed of flash. Such a terrifying speed, even the Bangu cannot be underestimated. Even, Su-yu didn't open the Jingmun. Instead, rely on your own strength, Maroda. Flowing water breaking rock fist. The faint blue energy began to wrap around Su-yu's fist, and under that gentle fluctuation, there was even a trace of terrorist attack hidden. The Superalloy Black Light's eyes froze slightly, then changed direction immediately, also facing Su-yu's position, and punched out with a punch. Superalloy Bazooka. The fist that was swung with all the strength was like a rocket launcher. It was this trick that once drove the evil wolves to a desperate situation. That is to say, the wolf's mentality of fighting more and more bravely has slowly reversed the situation. Superalloy Flash was defeated. It's now. The Sharingan in Su-yu's eyes turned wildly. The ability to copy is instantly activated. The strange movement of the Superalloy Black Light was reflected in Su-yu's mind for a moment. Not only the powerful movement of the Superalloy Black Light, but even the slightest details are deeply imprinted in Su-yu's movements. Boom! The fists of the two collided together. Su-yu, who is only a 6-star fighter, although not all of his strength, is still comparable to the Superalloy Black Light. After all, when Su-yu was 5-star, relying on the power of 8 inner gates, he was able to crush the Unicorn Immortal. But now, Su-yu has become a real 6-star warrior, and his combat power is much stronger than before. As for the Superalloy Black Light, it still takes more than 10 minutes to suppress the Unicorn Immortal. The gap between the two, to be honest, has been. A look of shock appeared on the face of Superalloy Black Light. The Superalloy rocket launcher is his famous stunt, but even so, he can't repel Su-yu. It can be seen that Su-yu's strength is obviously not as simple as he imagined. Come again. The Superalloy Black Light roared loudly, and the power on his body seemed to gather together. Ultimate's energy even caused the surrounding air to twist uncontrollably. All I saw was that the muscles in the Superalloy Black Light's whole body seemed to be about to explode. You can even see the exploded blood vessels above the muscles. Ong buzz. There were bursts of mourning in the surrounding air. It seems that there is some fear of the power of Superalloy Black Light. The 3-tomo Sharingan in Su-yu's eyes gradually stopped turning. And at this time, the corner of Su-yu's mouth couldn't help but outline a trace of a smile. Because, copy, has succeeded. And on the attribute bar that only Tsuyu can see, there is a Superalloy bazooka. And the progress bar for breaking the limit ability also rose from 48%, all of a sudden, to 50%. Already halfway there. Since it has been copied, there is no need to continue. Tsuyu murmured, and then his body burst out, the speed directly surpassing the speed of sound. Even without the speed of flash, Yinshu's speed can easily exceed the speed of sound. Because, after being promoted to 6-star, Tsuyu's physical fitness has experienced a terrifying increase. This kind of growth is beyond the imagination of many people. What a speed! The pupils of the Superalloy black light couldn't help but condense slightly, constantly looking for the location of Tsuyu around. However, Tsuyu's speed is really too fast. It is simply not something that Superalloy black light can find. However, as an S-class hero, Superalloy black light still has a lot of records. So, the alloy black light suddenly aimed at its left direction, and punched out. And where is the figure of Tsuyu, Shion? The same punch. But on this fist, there are fluctuations that are extremely familiar to Superalloy black light. Superalloy bazooka. Exactly the same moves as yourself. How can it be? Superalloy black light couldn't help losing his voice. But Tsuyu obviously didn't give the Superalloy black light any responsiveness. The power of the 6-star warriors was all blasted out. The energy of ultimate caused the body of the Superalloy black light to directly explode the blood mist. Even more like a kite with a broken string, it fell to the ground fiercely. On the ground of the venue, a huge deep pit was ruthlessly smashed out by the body of the Superalloy black light. Dust filled the air. Gradually, the dust disappeared. A white figure was revealed, standing quietly on the ground of the venue, without even the slightest wrinkle on his body, as if he wasn't the one who fought just now. And in front of him, a Superalloy black light, lying on the ground. The previous doubts still remained on his face. Why, Tsuyu can also use his own skills. And Bangu, who was sitting on the side, couldn't help but clenched his fists. So, Tsuyu's ability should be copied. However, this copying ability is a bit too terrifying. It is possible to copy a move that has never been seen before in such a fast time. Bangu couldn't help but gasp. Although, on today's Earth, many people have superpowers. Just like the ability of the tornado, it is the same as Anti-Wan. In Bangu's view, Tsuyu's ability is copying. This kind of ability sounds powerful, but at the same time, it is also a bit tasteless. After all, even if some people have such abilities, they can't use them well or their abilities are not strong. There is no use at all. And now, Tsuyu has applied this skill to ultimate. Even in battle, it can be copied easily. This kid is completely a fighting genius. A genius born to fight. Bangu was not stingy with his praise. Even stood up and said to Tsuyu drum. Tsuyu pulled the Superalloy black light up from the ground and said with a smile. Thank you senior for willing to fight with me. Superalloy blacklight took a complicated look at Tsuyu, then sighed. I'm not your opponent, even if you don't have the ability to copy me, I can't beat you. This time, it's you. Superalloy blacklight, but no complaints. He just looked at Tsuyu quietly. After Tsuyu exchanged a few words of pleasantries, he left with Bangu and the others. On the road, many people looked at the few people and couldn't help but exclaimed. Oh my god, what did I see? It was Tsuyu and Genos, with silver fangs. Hiss, I must be the luckiest person to be able to see 3S level heroes walking together. Yeah, I want to take a picture and send it to my circle of friends. Oh, by the way, who is that bald man next to them? Saitama's footsteps gradually stabilized. The expression on his face began to froze. Bald, when have you ever been called bald? What a joke. It's fine if I'm not as famous as Tsuyu and the others, but when I walk with Tsuyu and the others, I'm still being verbally attacked. I have never seen such a humble person. Moreover, this humble person turned out to be himself. This is the so-called clown, is it me? Saitama hides under a utility pole, drawing circles. Tsuyu shrugged helplessly, comforting Saitama. Teacher, don't care about other people's woodwind, just be yourself. Saitama showed a distressed expression, as if he was about to cry. Mr. Tsuyu, I feel so bad. Tsuyu was also very helpless. There is no way, People in this world have always had a kind of fanatical worship for S-class heroes. And some heroes who are not very famous don't have such treatment. What's more, Saitama's reputation is not good, and he still walks with S-class heroes like the three of them. Naturally, such a situation occurred. The four walked slowly under the watchful eyes of many people. Along the way, Bong Ji-yu asks, Su-yu, next, where are you going to challenge? During the conversation between the three, Bang Ji-yu also knew Su-yu's purpose. Challenge the heroes. Such courage is still very good. After all, S-level heroes are the pinnacle powerhouses in this world. If you can find all the heroes, then the number one S-level hero is Su-yu. Bangu is also full of praise for this. It has been a long time since Bang Ji-yu saw such a courageous young man. Bangu's words made Su-yu think for a moment. The Superalloy Black Light challenge is over, and I also got the Superalloy Black Light skill. Superalloy Bazooka. This ability relying on the explosion of the physical body is quite good, and this ability can become stronger with the improvement of the strength of the physical body. But, the next hero, who should it be? If it is ranked according to heroes, the next one should be Pig God. But the Pig God's ability. To be honest, it wasn't very useful for Su-yu. The ability of the Pig God is a bit similar to that of a weirdo, but the Pig God is still on the side of humans, so he has become a hero. Moreover, the ability of the Pig God is limited. It is not endless. Although he has the ability to break the limit, Su-yu doesn't want to become a fat man like the Pig God in the future. Therefore, Pig God directly ruled it out. The rest are the top 10 heroes. Among the top 10, Metal Knight, Drive Knight and King have long been excluded by Su-yu, so they are not included. Then, the next one should be the Zombie Man. For the Zombie Man, even Su-yu felt a bit of trouble. The Zombie Man's combat power may not be very strong, but the Zombie Man has an extremely pervert ability. That is immortality. Even if it is severely damaged, it can be repaired. Even Su-yu couldn't help but feel a little headache. From Su-yu's point of view, unless his combat power breaks through the 7-star level, he cannot kill the Zombie Man at all. That being said, Su-yu is still very interested in the Zombie Man's immortality. Although he has Naruto's physique, compared with the Zombie Man, he is obviously much weaker. There seemed to be a light shining in Su-yu's eyes. The next one is the Zombie Man. Su-yu's voice sounded softly. Bangu couldn't help being stunned for a moment, and immediately his face became a little weird. Are you sure you want to challenge Zombie? Su-yu said. What's the matter, is there a problem? Bangu pondered for a moment, then said in a deep voice. Do you know what the ability of the Zombie Man is? Although the combat power of the Zombie Man is not very strong, his ability is really pervert. When Bangu mentioned the Zombie Man, he couldn't help shivering. Su-yu knew the Zombie Man's ability, but Su-yu still listened to Bangu's opinion. After all, the old man's knowledge is still very wide. Bangu continued, you know the House of Evolution, which is the one that stops you three from being destroyed. You must know the Unicorn Fairy, but do you know the man who transformed the Unicorn Fairy? Genos and Saitama shook their heads. Su-yu was somewhat impressed. In the plot, the crazy man wants to obtain Saitama's ability, but he hesitates that Saitama is too strong, even the Unicorn Immortal is no match for Saitama's punch. Therefore, it ended without a problem. And at this moment, it became the Soviet army. Su-yu defeated the Unicorn Immortal, but the man escaped. Even if the entire House of Evolution was wiped out, there was no trace of that man. Bangu continued, and the Zombie Man is the number 66 experimental product transformed by that man. Su-yu's pupils couldn't help trembling. The Zombie Man turned out to be transformed by that man. In the past, Su-yu had only watched anime, and didn't know much about manga. Therefore, I didn't know that the Zombie Man was transformed by that person. Thinking of this, Su-yu couldn't help but gasp. That man was able to transform even a Zombie Man. It seems that the research on the human body has really reached a kind of ultimate fear. For a while, Su-yu became interested in that man. A trace of light flashed in Bangu's vicissitudes of eyes. The Zombie Man's combat power may not be strong, but his immortal body, even if I meet him at the peak, it is a bit of a headache. Because, it's really immune to death, Bangu said in a low voice. When you're fighting someone who's weaker than you, it's natural to take it lightly, because it's easy to beat him. But when this person who is weaker than you has an immortal body, you have to be careful. Because he can make countless mistakes, because he has an immortal body and can make unlimited shots. As long as he can succeed once, you will lose. Bangu looked at Su Yu deeply. At this moment, Su Yu, in Bangu's view, should be in a state of youthful vigor. Especially after his strength has been improved so much, Su Yu will definitely feel proud in his heart. And now, Bangu wants to help Sunning get rid of the pride in Su Yu's heart. Otherwise, if you really face the zombie man, then Su Yu will definitely lose badly. But obviously, Bangu underestimated Su Yu. Although Su Yu's age is not very old, her heart and disposition are very mature. With the experience of 2 lifetimes, Su Yu will not look down on anyone like his peers. A person who can be ranked as an S-class hero, no matter how weak he looks, has his own strengths. When Su Yu challenges these heroes, he wants to copy the excellence of these heroes to himself. Therefore, Sunning will not despise anyone. Even that person's fighting power is really rubbish. Bangu said in a low voice. I know that you have never felt the taste of failure, but you have to remember that anyone has something good. This, maybe when you face the zombie man, you will know. Bangu said a lot, but the main thing is to let Sunning calm down his mood. I hope Su Yu will not be proud. Su Yu, it is impossible to be proud anyway. Because, Su Yu is very clear. However, at this moment, bursts of commotion suddenly resounded around. Look, that's Su Yu, that's him, the one who destroyed this town. All I saw was a middle-aged man rushing over with a ferocious face and roaring. At the same time, in a dark corner, Sonic looked at Su Yu standing on the street with a smile on his face, a smug smile on his face. Next, I will see you, what to do. Sonic looked deeply at Su Yu in the crowd. He hated Su Yu's aloof appearance, and even the brilliance that radiated from Su Yu's body made Sonic very disgusted. Although the meteorite was crushed, the fragments of the meteorite still destroyed the places where many people lived. You can use this to completely destroy your reputation. From now on, you are no longer a high-ranking hero, but a mouse that everyone shouts and beats. Sonic crossed his arms and leaned against the wall, watching all this quietly. Among the crowd, the 4 of Su Yu stared at the middle-aged man in front of them in bewilderment. Because there were already many people next to Su Yu, the sudden appearance of this middle-aged man caused many people to look at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man pointed at Su Yu angrily and scolded. It's you, do you think you're the hero who saved the entire city after smashing the meteorite? Have you ever seen, under the many meteorite fragments, destroyed houses? And what should they do? How can you be such a selfish person as a hero? The middle-aged man said several words in one breath. Every word is a hysterical roar, as if venting his inner unhappiness. Everything, isn't it because your strength is not enough? Because of your failure, many people have been displaced. Since you know you will fail, don't be brave at the beginning. Other heroes will find a way to solve it. You caused such a disaster, do you still want to continue to be a hero? Look at this city, it's all you're doing. Hearing the hysterical roar of the middle-aged man, some people around were even infected bit by the roar of the middle-aged man. They seemed to have seen Su Yu's failure from another aspect. Among the crowd, a person hesitated for a moment, then pointed at Su Yu. Yeah, these are all caused by you. Did you hear that? The displaced people are screaming in grief. Your actions of Qingshui have caused so many people to suffer disasters. You, Su Yu must be responsible. The middle-aged man roared continuously, seeming to infect the surrounding crowd. Accompanied by the crazy shouts of the middle-aged people, some people with unstable minds around them have begun to shake their hearts. Originally, Su Yu was supposed to be a hero, but at this moment, in their hearts, he became the culprit of his own displacement. Yeah, you cold-blooded man. Hurry up and quit the hero. Resign, resign, resign. As the voices became louder and louder, more and more people joined in and started criticizing Su Yu. Bangu stood beside Su Yu, with his hands behind his back, looking at all this indifferently, without the slightest wave in his old eyes. Just from the corner of the eye, he quietly stared at Su Yu standing beside him, seeming a little curious. If it were you, what would you do? Seeing the person you protect, you see yourself as a villain in a blink of an eye, what do you think? The title of hero is not so easy to bear. Bangu kept talking in his heart, waiting for Suyu's action. Saitama looked at all this with a blank face, and picked his smooth head, apparently a little puzzled. But Genos couldn't bear it anymore. He wanted to make a move, but Suyu grabbed his arm. Brother. Genos looked at Suyu, who lowered his head. They're slandering you. Genos witnessed with his own eyes the situation where Suyu crushed the meteorite. In Genos' heart, the existence of Suyu has even occupied a large part of his position. And the position of the shadow in that place. Sonic's mouth cracked into a smile. Surroundings, the roars of the demented masses continued to be heard. Is this the group mentality? It's scary to be so uniform. Looks like it worked. Sonic walked out slowly, looked deeply at Suyu surrounded by the crowd, and couldn't help laughing. Next, it's time for me to make my debut. Sonic's knees were bent and wronged, and then instantly burst out. At the same time, the sound exploded instantly. Suyu, you bastard, do you want to completely destroy the entire city? Today, I, Sonic, will tear off your veil and let the whole city take a good look at your sinful appearance. Sonic roared out. The speed directly reached the speed of sound. Indistinctly, there is a level beyond the speed of sound. Has the mastermind behind the scenes finally come out? Bangu on the side narrowed his eyes slightly, looked at Suyu beside him, and murmured. I'm curious, what will you do? Suyu raised his head slowly, with a hint of a smile on his face. Who did I say? It turned out to be you, annoying guy. Do you really think I can't kill you? The speed that Sonic is proud of at the moment, in Suyu's view, is simply as slow as death. After all, Suyu's speed now exceeds 4 times the speed of sound. Even, it has reached the level of 5 times the speed of sound. Therefore, Sonic is like that flea in front of Suyu. What I saw was that Suyu slowly raised his fist, and the muscles on his arm began to explode bit by bit. It seems that there is a terrifying power, which will burst out from Suyu's fist. Suddenly, Suyu punched out. Superalloy bazooka. The skill just copied from the Superalloy black light. Instantly smashed out. With terrifying power, and even with ultimate speed, it landed directly on Sonic in an instant. The power of terror exploded directly. Sonic was pierced abruptly. Since flies are such an annoyance, just kill them. Kill. Before, the middle-aged man who spoke had a horrified look on his face, and couldn't help but take a few steps back. Even those people couldn't help being afraid. Killing, for ordinary people like them, is already a very cruel thing. What's more, killing people so easily in public. Suyu's decisiveness even surprised Bangu beside him. Although, killing people is not a big deal. But now Suyu is a hero. A hero represents the justice of the entire human race. If even a hero can kill people casually, the reputation of the entire Heroes Association will be severely damaged. 8 euro. Bangu looked at the man who died in Sus' hands. Sonic. Well, a killer. This can also be explained. Moreover, he was also the chief culprit in slandering Suyu. Bang Ji-yu has already begun to make decisions in his heart. But the masses don't think so. They looked at Suyu in horror. They really couldn't connect the gentle Suyu before with the decisive Suyu now. In particular, Suyu's hand was still dripping bright red blood. Suddenly, Suyu raised his head and smiled. However, with the blood in Suyu's hand, this smile, no matter how you look at it, is cool. Suyu looked at the group of people in front of him. Why, you guys are starting to have opinions now. In the crowd, a person said tremblingly. But my new car was smashed because of meteorite fragments. He looked at Suyu, wanting to get an explanation from Suyu. But to put it bluntly, it is the greed in the heart that is at work. If Suyu directly compensates him for a new car now, believe it or not, he won't let one go. But obviously, Suyu is not such a cowardly person. Suyu sneered. You have an opinion, tell me about the meteorite, what am I doing? But, wasn't it you who crushed the meteorite? People said righteously. The sneer on the corner of Suyu's mouth became more intense. From Suyu's body, there seemed to be a wave of extremely cold breath. The surrounding temperature seemed to be on the atmosphere of Suyu's body, and it began to get lower little by little. Do you think that if the meteorite is not broken, your house and car will be fine? But that person said, there will be other heroes to solve it, you are just showing off. Some people thought they had found the truth, and began to speak more intensely. But obviously, Suyu didn't intend to tangle with them anymore. Looking at the crowd, said lightly, you all heard me clearly, I didn't become a hero to protect you people, but to prove myself. It's to challenge myself. To put it bluntly, your affairs have half a cent to do with me. What does your life and death have to do with me? Suyu's words were very sharp, like a sharp sword, ruthlessly piercing the fragile hearts of some people. They looked at Suyu with pale faces. They really couldn't imagine that AS-rank heroine would say such a thing. Even Bang Ji-yu, who was beside Suyu, couldn't help being surprised. Originally, Bang Ji-yu thought that Suyu would be restrained because of his status as a hero. But unexpectedly, this guy Suyu didn't care about his hero status at all. Such a person doesn't have any shackles on his body, and any threats can't cause the slightest harm to Suyu. It is estimated that only such a person can be so successful. Bang Gu's old eyes couldn't help trembling. He looked at Suyu, as if on Suyu's body, he imagined the past. And Saitama also looked at Suyu in surprise. Wow, he never thought that Suyu would choose such a path. The corner of Saitama's mouth began to show a trace of a smile, and only he could hear the voice. Even Genos beside him didn't hear it. As expected of Mr. Suyu, that means you can do such a thing. But, I like it. Saitama smiled. Genos also looked at Suyu deeply, and upon hearing Suyu's words, Genos couldn't help clenching his fists. Sure enough, it's senior brother who has such an awareness. Maybe this is the reason why senior brother is stronger than me. Senior brother's state of mind is simply so powerful that it is extremely outrageous. The surrounding crowd began to gradually become quieter. Even the people who fought with Suyu before gradually lost their temper. Because they found that they didn't seem to have any excuses to criticize the young man in white in front of them. Suyu looked at the group of people and sneered. Do you really think that with the words of you people, you can hit me? A group of mobs living on the backs of heroes, what qualifications do you have to say such things? When Suyu said these words, he thought of those, living in a safe city and enjoying a corrupt life in the world. On the front line, there are tens of thousands of soldiers resisting the beasts, but they are enjoying the safety piled up with their lives. What an irony! How similar is this kind of thing to today's thing? If it weren't for the Suyu took a deep breath, suppressed his urge to kill this group of people, and said to Genos and Bangu beside him. Let's go. Bangu took a deep look at Suyu and walked beside Suyu quietly without saying a word. It was Genos who said to Suyu, Senior brother, what you said just now is really great. When will I have the same sentiment as you, senior brother? Suyu waved his hand and said calmly, this is not a perception, but a fact. I was never a hero to protect them, but to challenge myself. Of course, some people will say I'm selfish, but so what? Suyu smiled. What do they have to do with me? At this moment, Bangu is officially looking at Suyu. He suddenly discovered that the young man in front of him didn't seem to be so simple. Suyu's eyes were extremely clear, as if there was no impurity in the slightest. Looking into Suyu's eyes, Bangu couldn't help trembling. Yes, according to Suyu's psychology, those people's comments have nothing to do with Suyu. What Suyu is doing now is entirely based on his own mood. Everything, nothing. What a free and easy mind. However, only in this way is the only way to climb the strong. Unknowingly, Bangu was taught a lesson by the young man in white combat uniform in front of him. Bang Ji-yu smiled lightly. This kid, where did this monster come from? Bangu actually started to be a little interested in Suyu's background. The four walked in the eyes of many people. There are many emotions in the eyes. Jealousy, yearning, reverence, even disgust. As long as there are people, there is a difference. At this moment, the sinisterness of human nature is clearly revealed. However, the few people now don't care about the gazes of these people at all. He walked towards the position of the zombie man on his own. The position of the zombie man is actually mine. After all, zombie man is not in the same place like other heroes, but in the same place. So, soon, several people arrived at the location of the zombie man. Deep in a mountain, halfway up the mountain, there is a huge cave. There was continuous commotion in the cave. Genos illuminated the cave, and a group of bats flew out from the cave. If some ordinary people were here, they must have been scared to death. But several people were different. Flames spewed out from Janos' mechanical arm, and burned those bats directly and abruptly. At this time, it was slowly walking in. With the help of Genos' light, everyone gradually saw clearly that there was a scarlet eye in the deepest part of the cave. What I saw was that there was no other expression in those scarlet eyes. Yes, just that extremely rich red. The killing desire in the red can be clearly seen from those scarlet eyes. And an extremely hoarse voice resounded from the zombie man's mouth. It turned out to be Mr. Bang Ji-yu. The hoarse voice seemed to be produced by the friction of the damaged vocal cords. Bangu narrowed his eyes slightly, stared at the zombie man, and said lightly, "Staying here every day, I don't know how you persist. Gia, persevere." The zombie man suddenly gave a strange laugh. "Do you think, even if I don't eat or drink, is it possible that I will still die? I have been living here since I came out of the House of Evolution. Whether there are people or ghosts in the House of Evolution, I am already very content. I feel very good about my current life," the zombie man said with a smile. However, the zombie man's smile looked extremely sick. Even the three of Saitama couldn't help frowning. Saitama looked around and asked curiously, "This place, of course, can also be lived?" Janos' robotic eyes kept turning. It seemed to be analyzing the surrounding living conditions, and then Genos said seriously, "According to the conditions of this cave, it is obviously not realistic to want to live in it. However, if it's a zombie man, that's another matter." In Genos' brain, all the details about the zombie man began to emerge. The zombie man glanced at Genos lightly. It turned out to be a reformer, no wonder. Apparently, the zombie man is not too interested in reinvented people. On the contrary, Su-yu looked at the zombie man with interest. To be honest, Su-yu's understanding of zombie men is still not very deep. After all, Su-yu has only watched anime, and in anime, the number of appearances of zombie men is simply very low. That is, when playing Poros in the second season, the zombie man made a move. It can be said that after the arrival of Boros, all the heroes of the Heroes Association took action, except for the explosion. However, with so many heroes taking action, there are still very few descriptions about zombie men. Just knowing the zombie man's immortal body, other than that, there is no other description. I don't know much about the character of the zombie man. Therefore, Su-yu is more interested in zombie men. Especially the undead body of the zombie man. Su-yu is still wondering if his Sharingan can be copied. After all, although Sharingan can copy some abilities, those abilities must have their own foundation. It's like the Superalloy Black Light 06 and Bangu's two skills. The reason why these two skills can be copied is entirely because Su-yu's physical body has already reached their level, and what is needed is only their gestures. Other than that, those others are still difficult. Therefore, whether the zombie man's immortal body can be replicated or not, to be honest, even Su-yu has no idea. Of course, if it can be copied, it is still very good. After all, the immortality of the zombie man is still a very pervert skill. Even if it cannot be copied, it can still improve some progress bars. Now, Su-yu is more and more able to feel the benefits brought by the progress bar. Even Su-yu began to imagine how far his own progress bar would reach after it reached 100%. Maybe, it's not hopeless to be like Saitama. Su-yu looked deeply at the zombie man, his eyes filled with fiery fluctuations. The zombie man looked at the four of them and said calmly, "Bangu, what did you bring them here for?" With his hands behind his back, Bangu's old voice resounded from Bangu's throat. "There are juniors who want to challenge US-level heroes. Simply, bring them here to see the power of S-level heroes." Except for Bang Ji-yu, the zombie man still doesn't know anyone else. Although, Su-yu's current fame is very big. But people like zombie men who live in caves obviously know very little about the outside world. Of course, when something happens in the Heroes Association, Zombie Man will still know about it. But for that kind of thing, unless the entire Heroes Association is facing an extremely terrifying challenge, it's time. Like the previous Meteorite, although it looks very large in scale, to be honest, it is in a zone where human beings live. The place where the zombie man lives is a place where there is not even the slightest trace. It can be said that even if the radio wants to get here, it is extremely difficult. Because this kind of place is completely in the deep mountains and old forests. After hearing Bangu's words, the zombie man just sneered. Hee, challenge us. What challenge do I have? Not interested. The zombie man said casually, then closed his eyes, and lay down directly in the cave. It seemed that he was not interested in the 4 people in front of him. Su Yu looked at the zombie man quietly, while Bang Ji-yu smiled. Don't be so anxious. After I tell them about them, I think you will be interested. Bangu put his hands behind his back, his face full of confidence. Su Yu glanced at Bang Ji-yu in surprise, really didn't know that Bang Ji-yu knew the zombie man so well. But that's fine, otherwise I wouldn't have any good excuses to fight the zombie man. It's impossible to directly attack the zombie man like Lengtacheng. In that case, the beam between the two would be completely settled. At least, when he has a legitimate purpose, Su Yu will never make a move at will. However, the zombie man lying in the cave did not speak. As if already asleep, Bang Ji-yu smiled lightly. Not long ago, the House of Evolution was taken away. It was just such an ordinary word, but the zombie man on the ground who had been indifferent all this time couldn't help but open his eyes. He looked over suddenly, staring at Bangu firmly. There seemed to be an unbelievable look in his scarlet eyes. Impossible. Although the combat power of the Evolution House is not very strong, there is a unicorn. Unless it is the top 5S level heroes, it is difficult to break the Evolution House. The zombie man's words were extremely confident. After all, his understanding of the House of Evolution is still very deep. Especially the one-horned fairy Ashura is extremely terrifying. In Ashura's mode, even ordinary S-level heroes are no match for him. Therefore, after hearing Bangu's words, 10,000 people in the zombie man's mind didn't believe it. He had also thought of many ways to destroy the House of Evolution. But although his immortal body is extremely terrifying, his combat power can only compete with some ghost-level monsters. If you are facing a terrifying dragon-level monster like Ashura Unicorn, you can only rely on your tenacious vitality to constantly consume it. But the power of the Ashura Unicorn is very terrifying. Even relying on the powerful vitality of the immortal body, it is impossible to directly consume it to death. So, gradually, the zombie man also dispelled this idea. But now, Bangu suddenly told himself that the House of Evolution was destroyed, and the first thought in the zombie man's mind was not to believe it. Bang Ji-yu seemed to want to explain, but at this moment, Su Yu stood up with a sunny smile on the corner of his mouth. Senior, if you don't believe me, then let's have a competition, isn't that all right? Su Yu's voice sounded slowly. The zombie man's scarlet eyes kept scanning Su Yu's body, as if he was thinking about something. Then, the zombie man sneered. Why should I compete with you? I naturally have a way to prove it, and, even if you destroy the Evolution House, then I don't need to compete with you. There was a hint of disdain in the zombie man's voice. Maybe it's been a long time since I haven't dealt with anyone. Therefore, when the zombie man speaks, he will appear to have a low EQ. But Su Yu is not such a stingy person. He just took a deep look at the zombie man, and then said to several people around him. Since the seniors are not willing, then we just leave. Bangu and Genos were a little surprised. On the contrary, Saitama seemed to know something, and just looked at Su Yu quietly. Although a little surprised, Su Yu spoke, and Bangu and Genos didn't say anything. He just followed Su Yu and walked out of the cave. After a long distance from the cave, Su Yu gradually stopped. At this time, Naotong and Genos couldn't help asking, Su Yu, why did you give up? In fact, if you explain for a while, the zombie man may still agree to you. Bang Ji-yu looked at Su Yu suspiciously and said. Su Yu just smiled lightly and said, Don't worry, wait a moment, the zombie man will attack naturally. Why? Bang Ji-yu is still a little confused. But suddenly, in the cave in front of the zombie man, there were bursts of terrifying roaring sounds, as if there was a terrifying force erupting from the ground. Bangu's pupils couldn't help but began to shrink. What it is? There was a trace of solemnity in Bangu's old voice. Then it was possible to see people without vital signs suddenly popping up from the ground and walking out. There was a rancid smell on their bodies. Indistinctly, one could even smell the extremely disgusting fluctuations on their bodies. White-collar guy from a working-class background. Suyu slowly stepped forward. There were patches of indifference all over his face. If my guess is correct, it should be people from the Monster Association. In fact, at this point in time, it is almost time for the members of the Monster Association to make a move. However, what puzzled Suyu was that although it was attacked by the members of the Monster Association, the zombie man did not seem to be attacked by the members of the Monster Association. Could it be that, along with my appearance, some original plots have begun to change? Although there are doubts in my heart. But a long time ago, Suyu had discovered that there was a monster around him. At that time, Saitama also found out. Only Bangu and Genos didn't find out. But Genos, as a reformer, was the first to react before Nagu. There was an unbelievable look on Bangu's old face. Monster Association, how dare they? Bangu lost his voice. For a long time, the Hero Association and the Monster Association have been in a state of natural opposition. But the Heroes Association, on the bright side, has always maintained a state of suppression. After all, although the monsters of the Monster Association are very powerful, they will never appear in the eyes of everyone. Even if they do appear, they are always entangled by some heroes. But Bang Ji-yu, as the top 3 terrifying existences of the S-class heroes of the Heroes Association, naturally knew it. Those monsters with dragon-level strength in the Monster Association are extremely terrifying existences. Even the top few existences in the Monster Association need several S-level heroes to compete. Just like the Phoenix Man now. At least, it is impossible for an S-class hero without the top 5 strengths to be the opponent of Phoenix Man. Because, the strength of the Phoenix Man is very terrifying. Just the extremely terrifying recovery ability is almost comparable to the zombie man's immortal body. Suyu looked deeply at the zombie man's cave. A figure broke through the air and came out. He glared at the Phoenix Man in front of him. Damn it, how did the members of the Monster Association find me? As soon as Suyu and the others left, Phoenix Man appeared, which meant that Phoenix Man had been lurking here long ago, otherwise it would not have been possible so quickly. In the zombie man's hand, he pulled out a revolver crazily, aimed at the Phoenix Man's body, and shot crazily. And above the sky, there is already the reincarnated Phoenix Man. The plot is much faster than what Suyu knew. In Suyu's knowledge, the first time Phoenix Man appeared was just a ghost-level monster. Those who are suppressed by Tongdi are dead. That is to say, after being reincarnated later, he was able to suppress Tongdi. But now it seems that the plot seems to have skipped this step. Suyu began to have doubts in his heart. Saitama at the side watched all this quietly. Did not speak. On the contrary, Genos and Bangu were ready to move, and seemed to want to help the zombie man. Among the mountains, the Phoenix Man rolled up waves of storms, and there were fiery fluctuations in the storms, constantly melting the zombie man's body. But in a short time, the zombie man's physical body recovered again. As expected of a zombie man with an immortal body. However, in such a state, sooner or later, he would be consumed by Phoenix Man to death. Because, after the reincarnation, the strength of the Phoenix Man has long been at the level of a dragon. In addition to the various forms of the Phoenix Man, it is simply not something that the zombie man can compete with. Sure enough, the Phoenix Man's body began to change. Bursts of flame swept out from Phoenix Man's body. Fire Falcon mode. A series of sharp claws, like sharp blades, crazily grabbed at the zombie man. Blood spilled on the ground. The zombie man with no obvious fighting ability was suppressed in an instant. And the wounds on the zombie man began to heal bit by bit. Impressively, it is the undead body among zombies. At the same time, the Sharingan in Suyu's eyes began to turn. Want to copy the undead body of the zombie man. But to Suyu's disappointment, the immortal body cannot be copied. Suyu also understood. What Sharingan can copy can only be the ability to change on its own basis. For example, flowing water breaking rock fist is a skill that can be learned only by continuous practice. Like those natural abilities, it is obviously impossible to copy. Sighing, looking at the zombie man in decline, Suyu still chose to make a move. The body turned into a flash of yellow lightning, and rushed out frantically. A yellow lightning burst out instantly. As if above the sky, there is a gaping hole pierced through. Bangu's face couldn't help changing slightly. Be careful, Phoenix Man's strength cannot be underestimated. With that said, Bangu was about to catch up, ready to help. Saitama, however, stopped Ku. There was a smile on his face. Since it's Mr. Suyu's own idea, let Mr. Suyu do it himself. Saitama took a deep look at the Phoenix Man in the distance, and Suyu who had joined the battlefield, and smiled lightly. We are right here, just take a good look at it. Bangu seemed to want to say something, but seeing Saitama's expression, and Suyu who had already joined the battlefield, he still sighed. Give up this idea of yourself. Forget it. Bangu shook his head. He suddenly realized that he didn't seem to understand the young man in front of him. Obviously today, he has seen a lot with Suyu, but he suddenly discovered that there seems to be a mysterious atmosphere permeating Suyu's body at any time. Under this aura, even Bangu, who was used to seeing many scenes, couldn't see clearly. On the battlefield, the Phoenix Man crazily launched a series of extremely terrifying attacks on the zombie man. The joy of killing was revealed on his face. And the zombie man can only resist forcefully. There is no way. Facing the sudden and terrifying Phoenix Man, the zombie man is no match at all. In addition, Phoenix Man's recovery ability is also very strong. Even with crazy shots, there is no feeling of becoming weak. Yes, it's just the Phoenix Man, with his ever-increasing terrifying power. However, a yellow lightning bolt swept out crazily, accompanied by a series of murmurs. Flowing water rock-breaking fist. A faint blue energy emerged. Then, water breathing. The Sharingan in Suyu's eyes turned crazily, looking for the weakness of Phoenix Man. He knew very well that if the Phoenix Man transformed into a King Kong state, he might not be able to kill the Phoenix Man even if he tried his best. So, before Phoenix Man has transformed into his strongest state, what Suyu has to do is to kill him with one blow. Only in this way can the Phoenix Man be beheaded at the least cost. Although he was the reincarnated Phoenix Man, his brain still couldn't react to Suyu's speed approaching 5 times the speed of sound. Suddenly, bursts of tingling pain came from Phoenix Man's abdomen. Even with the terrifying repair ability, it was constantly repairing, but where was it? It seemed that a terrifying energy invaded his abdomen, constantly destroying the cells in his own body. Even. Suyu raised his hands again instantly. With a punch, he suddenly aimed at Phoenix Man's abdomen, and smashed out for something. Superalloy bazooka. Suyu couldn't put it down because of the ability copied from the Superalloy black light. Although it doesn't have the power of flowing water and broken rock fist, the most important thing for the Superalloy bazooka is to kill with one blow. Concentrating all his strength on the fist, it exploded like a rocket launcher. It can be said that it was completely created for one-shot killing. Back then, the Superalloy black light relied on such power to kill not a few sea-level monsters. When a person's strength reaches a certain level, even dragon-level monsters can be easily killed. At the same time, the 8 inner gates, Jingmun, also opened in an instant. A flash of color began to appear on Suyu's body. That was the harm to his body after opening the Jingmun. But obviously, Suyu, who possesses Naruto's physique, can barely heal the horrific injuries caused by the 8 inner gates even if he opens the 6th gate. Soon, Suyu's skin began to return to its original appearance. Then, he punched out. The terrifying power instantly exploded in midair, and there seemed to be waves of roars from the surrounding space. Booming and exploding, Ultimate's power was vented in Phoenix Man's abdomen, and in an instant, it directly pierced Phoenix Man's body. The bright red blood overflowed directly. Like a river, it flows out. Phoenix Man didn't even figure out what was going on. The passing vitality in his body had already confused Phoenix Man's sanity. The body fell directly from the sky, and the summoned zombies all disappeared before they were even in a hurry to play a role. Turned into corpses again. Zombie Man tough. He opened his eyes and looked at Suyu who beheaded Phoenix Man with one punch. Even if he was an immortal zombie man, he couldn't help but his pupils trembled. Good, terrifying strength. The zombie man swallowed. He seemed to have seen a scene that he had hardly seen in his entire life. A dragon-level monster was killed by Suyu so easily. But is it really that easy? It's not easy at all. Because, in that punch, the power that Tsuyu bestowed was extremely terrifying. 8 inner gates, Sharingan, Fist of Flowing Water, Superalloy Bazooka, Breath of Water. Every skill, placed in Tsuyu's real world, can set off a wave of waves. But in the short time of less than one breath, Tsuyu actually directly used a full 5 skills. The consumption of Tsuyu is also very large. But at the same time, such a terrifying power still caused Tsuyu to explode beyond what the Phoenix Man could bear. He punched him directly. Such a feat would be difficult even for Bangu. You know, in the plot of the manga, Emperor Tong killed Phoenix Man, but it took a lot of effort. He even used his big moves. It was the one who reluctantly killed the Phoenix Man. It can be said that Phoenix Man's strength, if placed in the Heroes Association, is at least at the level of Tongdi. And it was such a terrifying monster that was killed by Tsuyu's punch. Tsuyu panted and looked ahead, where there appeared an attribute bar that only Tsuyu could see. Seeing that the ability to break the limit has skyrocketed again to the progress bar of 5 points. Tsuyu also couldn't help showing a smile. After that, Tsuyu looked at the zombie man. The zombie man noticed Tsuyu's gaze, and turned his head to the side. Said stubbornly, "Don't think that if you help me, I will agree to your request." The zombie man paused and hesitated. "However, even if it is a different challenge, I am no longer your opponent." The zombie man added this sentence softly. Tsuyu just smiled lightly and said, "I didn't necessarily want to challenge you. I made a move just now, but as a hero, my companion was attacked. Is it possible that I still want to die?" "Of course. You can't die either," Tsuyu explained with a smile. Because although the zombie man was suppressed by the Phoenix Man, the zombie man's immortal body can fully support the immortality. Therefore, even if the Phoenix Man is already in the state after reincarnation, he still can't kill the zombies. Tsuyu even estimated that the Phoenix Man sent by the Monster Association is entirely for the future to restrain the zombie man. That is to say, the Phoenix Man has an extremely terrifying recovery ability, can continuously suppress the zombie man, and will not let the zombie man rely on his own immortal body to consume himself to death. If it was replaced by other dragon-level monsters from the Monster Association, they might be directly consumed by the zombie man. Unless it's a big snake. Or elder centipede. But those two still have this more important thing to do. Naturally impossible, wasting time on the zombie man. Therefore, the best candidate is Phoenix Man. However, the members of the Monster Association did not expect that Tsuyu would appear here. Let the Monster Association's plan go to waste. Companion. The zombie man's heart trembled slightly, looking at Tsuyu in disbelief. Tsuyu nodded and said, "Since they are all heroes of the Heroes Association, they are naturally companions." The zombie man's heart began to stir up waves. Since Evolution House escaped, many people regarded the zombie man as unknown. It is completely ignoring that the zombie man was once an extremely ordinary person. Although in the House of Evolution, he got an immortal body. But at the same time, it also means that the zombie man will suffer criticism from others in the future. This kind of gaze is absolutely unbearable. But suddenly, from Tsuyu's mouth today, the word, a companion, appeared. It actually caused the zombie man's already closed heart to start to have slight ripples. It has been a long time since I heard the word companion from someone else's mouth. However, when the zombie man raised his head and wanted to look at Tsuyu, he suddenly discovered that Tsuyu's figure had disappeared in place. The zombie man looked at the ruins in front of him. Except for the body of the Phoenix Man, only the corpses of those crippled zombies remained. Companion. A ray of light suddenly appeared in the scarlet eyes of the zombie man. However, at this time, Tsuyu went straight to Bang Ji-yu with a serious look on his face. If the Monster Association made a move, then, in City Z, those monsters might have already made a move. If I didn't guess wrong, where, the evil wolf and the hero should have made their move. In the plot, it was because Saitama also participated, so it didn't cause any harm, but now, Saitama is with me. And, not just Saitama, but Genos and Bangu. Adding myself, it is equivalent to having 3S level heroes, gone. All of a sudden, the combat power of City Z became empty. Tsuyu looked at the three of them and said in a deep voice. "It's too late to say anything more, you guys, come back with me." Looking at Su Yu's dignified expression, Bangu and Genos obviously realized that something might happen. So he didn't say much, and directly followed Su Yu's pace run towards Zishi. In fact, ever since Phoenix Man appeared, Bangu felt that something was wrong. Although the monsters of the Monster Association have made a move before, they haven't directly sought out an S-level hero so blatantly. Usually, they destroy the city while the Hero Association members are not paying attention. Things like today, logically speaking, should not happen. Because, the threat of the zombie man itself is actually not that great. That is, an immortal body. In fact, as long as he doesn't get entangled with the zombie man can't be harmed by the members of the Monster Association. However, the members of the Monster Association directly found the zombie man. From that moment on, Bangu felt something was wrong. So, after hearing Su Yu's words, he followed suit right away. I don't have time to say more, what I can tell you is. While running towards the city, Su Yu explained. People from the Monster Association are very likely to attack City Z. The pupils of Bangu and Genos couldn't help shrinking. The Monster Association dared to attack City Z. You know, on the bright side of City Z, there are quite a few S-level heroes. Superalloy Black Light, and 2 S-level heroes with metal bats. Plus, there's Bang Ji-yu sitting in town. You know, when Su Yu and the others came out, no one knew their whereabouts. But facing such a lineup, if the Monster Association makes a move, that shows that the Monster Association, the monsters dispatched this time, at least have the existence of dragon level. There are even many ghost level monsters. Otherwise, it would be impossible to be so blatant. And such a thing, the Heroes Association has not encountered for a long time. Rao Bangu's ears and face could not help but a trace of cold sweat flowed out. In a venue in Z City, a shirtless young man was stepped on the ground by a huge monster and rubbed vigorously. If Su Yu was there, he would know that that young man was indeed a water dragon. Although the water dragon is not an S-level hero, in terms of strength, it is much stronger than those so-called sexy prisoners. But even a person as powerful as the water dragon was directly stepped on by a monster and kept rubbing. And that monster is a hero. Heroes, among dragon-level monsters, are existences that can rival dragon-level monsters like Phoenix Man. Compared with the water dragon, I don't know how much stronger it is. Junji took out a ferocious fruit from his body. On that fruit, there is even a disgusting liquid flowing out of the fruit. On the other side, some strong human beings have been beaten by heroes and cannot take care of themselves. Even Uncle Baoshan was ruthlessly screwed by the hero. Haoji kicked away the water dragon under his feet, came to Uncle Baoshan, and stared at Uncle Baoshan with a grinning face. Eat this, and I will spare you. Haoji directly opened Uncle Baoshan's mouth. No matter how much Uncle Baoshan resisted, it would have no effect. He was already blown up by the hero, but now he has no resistance at all. Directly, he ate the monster cells in one bite. Immediately, a bone spur protruded directly from Uncle Baoshan's body. Uncle Baoshan suddenly felt that there seemed to be an extremely terrifying force in his body, which began to fill his body. For a while, Uncle Baoshan, who was still a little bit resistant, started to indulge in it. Junji looked at Uncle Baoshan with a smirk on his face, as if looking at his own masterpiece. He is constantly showing off to the people around him. Did you see it? This is the effect of swallowing monster cells. Do you really think that the power of human beings can be compared with monsters? Come on, eat the monster cells, and you will become as big as him. In Haoji's voice, there seemed to be a seductive impulse, which made the people around him unable to help but look at the monster cells. Originally, the monster cell that made them feel a little disgusted. At this moment, it became a little hot. At this time, the monsterization of Baoshan was gradually completed. After Baoshan became a monster, his whole body was filled with an extremely terrifying aura. A gleam shot out of his eyes. Is this the power of monsters? Sure enough, Baoshan fell into ecstasy, and at this time, a weak voice came. You don't deserve to be the champion of the martial arts tournament. Baoshan's pupils narrowed slightly, looking for the sound. But he saw that the water dragon was lying on the ground, talking weakly. A gleam of light flashed in Baoshan's eyes. Did you talk too much? With the fall of the voice, Baoshan's body burst out immediately. The speed was so fast that it even reached the speed of sound. One kick directly landed on the belly of the water dragon. Even the bones in the body of the water dragon exploded in an instant. The sound of bones breaking was extremely loud. Gia Gia Gia, did you see it? This is the calendar area after devouring the monster cells. Haoji laughed wildly at the side. Did you see? After devouring the monster cells, he has reached the strength of the dragon level. Even an S-level hero may not be able to compete. In the hero's hand, he held the monster cell. Want it? Come and eat it. The voice of the hero seems to have the ability to bewitch one after another, attracting the attention of many people. Some people couldn't help but move towards the hero's position. The water dragon was lying on the ground weakly, blood kept spitting out of its mouth, and its eyes began to turn gray. Can't eat. The water dragon continued to whisper. However, at this time, many people have been attracted by the power of the mountain explosion, and no one is calming the water dragon. However, at this moment, streaks of yellow lightning seemed to flash across the sky. It pierced through the sky in an instant. It suddenly landed on the ground. A white figure appeared in everyone's field of vision. With one kick, the monster cells in the hero's hands were directly kicked out. A faint voice sounded. I want to see, who dares to eat? The faint voice resounded throughout the venue of the martial arts conference. There was an extremely arrogant breath in the voice. And the owner of this aura also has such arrogance. A white figure appeared in everyone's field of vision. Who dares to block the actions of our monster association? Haoji condensed his voice. An extremely terrifying aura burst out from the surface of the body. Under this aura, waves of storms were rolled up. The storm seemed to lift the floor up, packed with terrifying power. However, even if such a terrifying storm swept over the white figure, it did not cause the slightest wave. Yes, just a pair of extremely calm eyes, watching the hero quietly. As if to say, that's it, the monster cell in the hero's hand had already been kicked by Suyu. Drops of green liquid exploded and spread on the ground. Even the ground was corroded by the drops of green liquid. A hole like a wormhole was exposed. Wisps of gunpowder smoke are still swaying constantly. Haoji's face became extremely ugly, and his actions were blocked by a person. Junji squinted his eyes and stared at Su Shou. And the ordinary people around, when they saw Suyu's face, they screamed in ecstasy. It turned out to be Suyu who ranked 10th. It seems that we are saved today. Yeah, S-level heroes have appeared, and these monsters are definitely not Suyu's opponents. Suyu, go, kill these monsters. The shouts of the people resounded through the officials of the entire martial arts conference. Suyu's reputation, in the entire Heroes Association, is relatively good. Especially under such circumstances, it still looks very hot. Especially when facing monsters, the hero becomes the only existence that can resist monsters. It is their chance to survive. Therefore, their faces showed ecstatic expressions. A familiar name appeared in Junji's mind. Who am I? It turns out to be Suyu, a new S-Hero Genius warrior who joined the Hero Association. Why, you also want to meddle in the affairs of our monster association? The hero's eyes flickered, as if a murderous intent shot out from the hero's eyes. After that, an extremely terrifying force was engulfed in it, and it erupted in an instant. Like a volcanic eruption, violent energy swept out, aggressively attacking Suyu crazily. However, Suyu just stood motionless on the ground, impressively dodging the terrifying air wave bursting out from the hero. Heroes are very powerful. Even among dragon-level monsters, they can be ranked number 1. Like the physical body of the Phoenix Man from before, with the strength of a hero, it can even be crushed. However, today's heroic aura seems to have chosen the wrong target. You know, even the Phoenix Man only managed 2 punches in Suyu's hands, and they exploded in an instant. The hero's gloomy gaze slowly swept across Suyu's green face. Immediately, he grinned grimly. It's just right, let you test it, the power of explosive mountain. After the words fell, Baoshan, who had already turned into a monster, punched Suyu suddenly. In the terrifying power, there seems to be a wave that can annihilate everything. Under this wave of fluctuations, the surrounding ruins exploded directly. With the blessing of monster cells, the power of explosive mountain has barely reached the level of dragon level. And you must know that even some S-level heroes may not be able to kill dragon level monsters. Therefore, the strength of Explosive Mountain should not be underestimated. The extremely terrifying power contained in the huge fist directly tore the air apart. One after another voices broke through the air, and the surrounding air was directly torn apart by Bao Shen's fist. Su Yu, be careful. Facing the terrifying power released by the monstrous Explosive Mountain, he couldn't help but exclaimed. They are ordinary people, and they have never seen the horror of real monsters. Especially monsters like Bao Shen, who already have dragon-level strength. It is an existence that they have never thought of. Every dragon-level monster can create an extremely terrifying crisis. Therefore, even with the appearance of Su Yu, they couldn't help but worry. Is this a monster? It's scary, some people said in trembling voices. Yeah, with such terrifying power, will Su Yu be his opponent? Facing the terrifying force that exploded the mountain, some people even began to feel a little bit of fear. He even started to worry about Su Yu. However, Su Yu just looked over indifferently. In a pair of calm eyes, the reflection of Bao Shen's huge fist appeared. A huge body appeared in Su Yu's pupils. The fist rushed towards Su Yu at a very fast speed. The power of ultimate seemed to tear Su Ning's skin apart. However, Su Yu just stretched out his palm. Gently open your palms. It seemed that there was a powerful force bursting out from Su Yu's palm. In an instant, he held Bao Shen's fist directly in his hand. Su Yu's palm, like the iron tongs, firmly held Bao Shen's fist. Then, gently pinch, card wipe. The crisp sound sounded in an instant. Accompanied by the sharp scream of Bao Shen, it sounded instantly. Ah! In Bao Shen's pupils, there seemed to be traces of bright red blood, all over the whole of Bao Shen's pupils. It directly turned into scarlet eyes. Bao Shen's huge body directly half-kneeled on the ground, and the expression on his face began to distort. The bones above the fist shattered in an instant. It turned into pieces of powder and merged into the blood. The entire palm, as if it had become a boneless chicken paw, was soft. Can't even mobilize the slightest strength. Even after devouring the monster cells, Bao Shen's physical fitness has been greatly improved, but Su Yu's strength. But he can easily kill dragon-level monsters like Phoenix Man directly. Not to mention, Explosive Mountain was the bottom of the regiment. In front of Su Yu, Bao Shen is completely a small Lulu, that is, the hero in front of him, who can arouse Su Yu's slightest interest. Su Yu easily threw Bao Shen's body aside. Suddenly, gunpowder smoke rose everywhere. Bao Shen's body directly hit the wall. Together with the wall, Ratong fell into the King of Ruins. Su Yu looked at Hao Ji. At this moment, only Hao Ji can make Su Yu feel the slightest interest. Although, after defeating Bao Shen, the progress bar of breaking the limit ability in the attribute column has also increased by 3 points. But Su Yu doesn't care. What Su Yu cares about is heroes. Hao Ji is a monster relying on his body. Perhaps, I can also copy the hero's skills like the skills I copied from Superalloy Blacklight and Bangu before. After all, according to Dian Chuan's reaction, at least several S-class heroes are needed to be limited to heroes. Such a terrifying physical body, I am afraid, even the Superalloy Blacklight cannot compete with it. The hero's body is extremely huge, at least 2 or 3 meters long. The huge body, just wherever it stands, releases an extremely depressing breath. Hao Ji stared at Su Yu firmly, his majestic voice resounded. Su Yu, do you really think that if you become an S-class hero, you can be my opponent? Hao Ji's eyes suddenly became scarlet. Sure enough, newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. It fell with the voice of Hao Ji. An extremely terrifying force began to surround the hero's fist. The muscles on the arm began to twist in an extremely strange arc. Exactly, with the twisting of these muscles, surging power, the strength of the physical body, began to condense out continuously. The surrounding air exploded in an instant, with the hero's arm as the center, and the surrounding area turned into a vacuum. Hero strike. The hero roared loudly, and terrifying energy burst out in an instant. It fell directly on Su Yu's body. Su Yu didn't even dodge in the slightest, his gaze was still looking ahead calmly. Why doesn't Su Yu dodge? Isn't it because I was scared stupid by the monster in front of me? Well, I knew that although Su Yu is an S-level hero, he is still too young to be a match for these ferocious monsters. Some people looked at the terrifying power of the hero, and began to become disheartened. Boom boom boom. Accompanied by an extremely terrifying roar, it exploded in an instant. When the hero's fist fell, terrifying storms swept out. The storm swept out. Countless gunpowder smoke was rolled up, covering the vision of many people. He couldn't help showing a ferocious smile on Junji's face. Those who can withstand my blow without dying, except for those physical S-level heroes, it is impossible for others to withstand it. Today, if an S-level hero can die in my hands, maybe my status in the Monster Association will be improved a lot. Where is the hero talking to himself? There were bursts of happy expressions on his face. However, the next moment, Haoji's pupils began to shrink. Accompanied by a soft voice sounded. As you said, if a dragon-level monster dies in my hands, shouldn't my status in the Heroes Association be improved? Junji suddenly withdrew his fist and stared solemnly into the gunpowder. How can it be? Haoji lost his voice. All I saw was that the gunpowder smoke in front of my eyes began to dissipate bit by bit. A thin body was revealed. A young man in a white combat uniform slowly walked out of the smoke. Every time he took a step, the momentum on his body seemed to turn into waves, slapping the void fiercely. Circles of ripple-like fluctuations spread. Su Yu's skin began to flush. 8 inner gates is open. The 6th gate, Jingmun. The moment the Jingmun opened, Su Yu's physical body directly reached the level of a 7-star warrior master. Plus Naruto has a strong physique. With his repair ability, just for a moment, the injuries Jingmun caused to his body were directly repaired. The corner of Su Yu's mouth began to draw an arc. The smile on the corner of his mouth seemed to be mocking. But more, still disdain. I thought how powerful you are, but it seems that I overestimated you. Su Yu stared deeply at the behemoth in front of him. This terrifying dragon-level weirdo who was able to beat Genos violently and beat Genos to the point of doubting his life. Seeing you today is nothing more than that. According to Su Yu's estimate, the hero's punch just now was just at the level of a 7-star master. Although the hero didn't put in all his strength, Su Yu knew very well that even if the hero did his best, he wouldn't be stronger. Because the 7-star Grandmaster level, even a small realm, has a big gap. So, the power level of a hero should be at the early stage of the 7 stars. It is indeed very strong. You must know that among the S-level heroes in the Heroes Association, there are not many who can have 7-star strength. Therefore, the hero is really capable of competing against several S-level heroes. This point cannot be faked. However, facing Junction, then the hero is a little bit worse. Although, Su Yu relied on the energy of the 8 inner gates to advance to the 7-star level, but his combat power was completely worthy of a mid-7-star powerhouse. Su Yu is confident that even if he is a late 7-star master, he can fight against him. But if it was just the transformation of a hero in the early days of the 7 stars, Su Yu lost interest in an instant. Su Yu, who has lost interest, naturally has no patience for heroes. Even the hero's skills are too lazy to copy. A punch was thrown out instantly. Superalloy bazooka. It belongs to the Superalloy black light skill. Shooting out his fist directly, just like the bazooka, bursting out with an extremely terrifying power zone in an instant. Under this force, Haoji's pupils vibrated instantly. It was like an earthquake. Immediately, alarm bells rang in Junji's heart. Every cell in the body is not telling the hero the horror of this punch. Haoji wanted to escape, but he was shocked to find that his body was completely locked by an extremely terrifying force star. There is simply no escape. This is a dead end. Haoji's eyes instantly became extremely scarlet. Like a hysterical monster, he took out a large number of monster cells from his bosom, and directly swallowed them in one gulp. Although for the current heroes, monster cells no longer have much effect. But so many monster cells can still bring a short-term improvement to the hero. But, will Su Yu give Haoji this chance? The speed of the fist soared instantly. Breath of Thunder was directly supported on Su Yu's fist, and even more so, he used the speed of Flash Fraser. The speed directly and abruptly surpassed 5 times the speed of sound. It landed on the hero's head in an instant. Boom! A dull sound exploded. The hero's head exploded abruptly. Like the bright red flesh of a melon, there was blood all over the place. Haoji's huge body also fell to the ground in response. He fell heavily to the ground. The huge weight shook the entire ground in an instant. The surrounding crowd were stunned for an instant. Although, the horror of the hero made the masses a little disheartened. However, Su Yu's strong kill still caused bursts of cheers in the hearts of the crowd. If you survived, as long as you were an individual, you were happy. Their fanatical gazes were fixed on Su Yu constantly. Su Yu Beef Batch. It is worthy of being ranked 10th as an S-level hero, and it really has something extraordinary. Woohoo, Su Yu, I want to give birth to a monkey for you. Waves of cheers continued to resound. Their eyes on Su Yu began to become hotter little by little. It's like looking at a star. However, Su Yu ignored the gazes of these people. When I was at a disadvantage, they were the ones who satirized me on the sidelines, but now that I won, they gave me fiery gazes. Even cheers. Cheap or not, for them, Su Yu didn't have any good feelings in his heart. Perhaps, this is the gap in human nature. Su Yu looked at the attribute bar that only he could see. After killing several dragon-level monsters, Su Yu's progress bar was even close to 60%. On the progress bar, it suddenly stopped at 59%. It was only a little bit short of breaking through to 60. Su Yu put away the attribute bar contentedly. He looked around and prepared to leave. But suddenly, a weak voice stopped Su Yu. Ahem, cough, Su Yu, wait a minute. Su Yu stopped his footsteps and quietly looked in the direction of the sound. There was a young man with long hair, naked from the upper body, with blood dripping all over his body. It looked extremely embarrassed. Su Yu knew this person. ZK the guy who also wants to apprentice Saitama. The body of the water dragon is also extremely powerful. He was even able to defeat an existence like Baoshan who had won many martial arts champions in a row. Although he was hung up and beaten by a dragon-level monster like a hero. But if the water dragon joins the hero association, it will be easy to become an A-level hero. If you improve yourself, even an S-level hero is possible. What are you doing? Su Yu is quite interested in water dragons. Because this person's character is quite upright. Shalong said with some difficulty. I want to worship you as my teacher. A look of determination suddenly surged in Shalong's eyes that were about to slacken. Su Yu froze for a moment. Immediately, his face became weird. There are still people who want to worship themselves as teachers. Immediately, Su Yu understood. Water Dragon and Genos are somewhat similar. In the anime it was Saitama who killed Hiro, so he wanted to worship Saitama as his teacher. But today, I changed the plot again. Therefore, Shalong wants to worship himself as a teacher. Facing the eyes of the water dragon, Su Yu said lightly. I reject, Su Yu's faint voice sounded. The water dragon lying on the ground couldn't help but shake his eyes for a while. Reject, what's the meaning? The water dragon became anxious immediately. I can do many things. As long as you can teach me the secret of becoming stronger, I can do anything. When he saw that Su Yu punched the hero directly, Shalong had already made up his mind. Be sure to learn the secret to becoming stronger from Su Yu. But judging by the current situation, it seems impossible. Because, when Su Yu said this sentence, he looked extremely indifferent. Su Yu looked at the water dragon lying on the ground indifferently. It wasn't that Su Yu didn't want to hand over the water dragon. On the contrary, Su Yu actually attaches great importance to water dragons. Because the character of the water dragon is completely in line with Su Yu's appetite. If he could teach something, Su Yu would naturally be willing. However, in half a month, I will return to the real world. At that time, the entire One Punch Forbidden Area will be reset when the next student of Yangcheng University enters it. One Punch has returned to the time node when Su Yu just came in. Therefore, everything that needs to be reset is completely unnecessary for Su Yu. Su Yu glanced at the water dragon lightly and said, what is really strong is not what others teach you, but your own strong heart. Su Yu's voice was very soft, but when Shalong heard Su Yu's words, his pupils trembled slightly. Heart. Su Yu didn't say much, but left the venue of the martial arts conference on his own. If I remember correctly, the evil wolf and Shen Poseidon also appeared during this time period. Hungry Wolf. To be honest, Sunning doesn't dislike him very much. Because the person's position is never so obvious. He hates heroes, but he just hates that heroes are always victorious. He hates weirdos because, in his opinion, monsters are nothing but evil. He calls himself a human freak. He will be merciful when hunting heroes, even just for his own victory. When hunting monsters, he doesn't release water at all, because he hates monsters, and he hates them even more than heroes. And Suyu couldn't help but narrowed his eyes slightly while walking. The strength of the evil wolf may not be very strong now, but in the later period of time, the hungry wolf can evolve into many states. Even Saitama's punch may not be able to solve it. This alone is enough for many people to know how powerful wolves are. You know, in the human world, there are very few people who can catch Saitama's punch. But the wolf after evolution can catch one punch from Saitama, even many punches. Suyu still remembers it, in the comics. The form of the hungry wolf growing to its limit. With wings on his back, his sanity is completely lost, his strength is unknown, and he was knocked down by Saitama in an unknown way. The description of this paragraph alone is enough to understand the power of wolves. As for another dragon-level monster, Deep Poseidon, Suyu directly chose to ignore it. Although Deep Poseidon is good, but in Suyu's mind, compared with Hungry Wolf, this one is completely without any challenge. What Suyu wants is Hungry Wolf's mentality of fighting harder and harder. Perhaps, it is not necessarily necessary to stimulate your own potential. Suyu's eyes gradually became brighter. At this moment, with the attack of many dragon-level monsters from the Monster Association, the entire city of Z fell into a panic. Even, no more panic than the previous meteorite. Because, with the appearance of the meteorite, he could still escape, but facing the many monsters in the city, how could those unarmed ordinary people escape? It's good to be able to protect yourself. Along the way, Suyu saw many monsters, and Suyu solved them one by one. However, these monsters are all tiger-level monsters, and even ghost-level monsters are rarely seen. Because, monsters that have reached the ghost level are generally ruled by the Heroes Association. The heroes among them are watching. The monster-destroying power of ghost-level monsters is very powerful. If there is no hero, the damage to the entire city is very powerful. Suyu casually strolled in the city. Once a monster Suyu saw, as long as there was a chance to meet him, he would be killed by Suyu directly. The magic knife turned into sharp fragments, floating around Suyu's body. It seems to form a protective cover. Anyone who gets close to Suyu, or a monster, will be slashed by the magic knife Qian-Ren extremely horribly. Even ghost-level monsters, facing such a sharp magic knife Shinran, have only one fate. That is fall. Along the way, even Suyu's snow-white combat uniform was stained with dark red blood. Above the sky, yin-yang also gradually sank to the horizon. The orange-red light, like blood, swayed the entire Z city. Howls and even screams continued. In the streets and alleys, all kinds of battles continued to come. In a street, a young man with silver hair looked at the two middle-aged men who fell on the ground and sneered. I thought the hero was really from immune to death. As he spoke, the young man casually lifted the two middle-aged men on the ground with his feet. Showed a disdainful smile. If someone is here, they can find out. Lying on the ground, it was the Vest statue among the S-class heroes, and the metal ball stick. The two S-level heroes were actually defeated by the silver-haired young man in front of him. If it gets out, I'm afraid the entire Heroes Association will be boiling. Maybe, the members of the Monster Association will all find this young man. And this young man also has an extremely arrogant name. Hungry Wolf. The former chief disciple of Bangu has a talent beyond ordinary people. But later, his mind changed drastically. He defeated many juniors in the martial arts gym, and defected. The young man licked the wound on his body. Although he defeated the two S-class heroes, he left extremely serious wounds on Hungry Wolf's body. You know, the metal ball stick smashed the heads of two ghost-level monsters with two sticks. Even Baoshan, who barely stepped into the dragon level before, may not be able to suppress the opponent when facing the metal ball stick. However, Hungry Wolf relied on his innate talent to become more courageous as he fought more and more, and abruptly defeated the Metal Club and the Venerable Vest. However, in a position where the Hungry Wolf cannot see. On top of a tall building, there is a white figure standing on top of the tall building, looking down indifferently. And the position below is impressively where the Hungry Wolf is. Is this your talent? Yes, This person is Suyu. Just now, Suyu witnessed the entire battle process between Hungry Wolf and the two S-class heroes. However, Suyu didn't make a move. From Suyu's point of view, it doesn't matter if it's Hungry Wolf or the Vest and Metal Bat that are also S-level heroes. Suyu didn't care too much. What Suyu really cares about is whether he can copy usable fighting skills from them. Unfortunately, Hungry Wolf's talent cannot be replicated by himself. Because it is born, not learned through exercise. Therefore, Liu also lost interest. But, Suyu looked at the Hungry Wolf, and found that the Hungry Wolf left slowly, but did not kill the vested venerable and the metal club on the ground. Just dragging his injured body, step by step, he walked towards a place. Backquote, I'm curious, where will you go? A slight smile appeared on Suyu's face. At this moment, Suyu seems to have returned to the time when he stayed at home and watched anime. However, this time, Suyu was on the scene. Suyu's body flashed out from the tall buildings. Following the figure of the Hungry Wolf, it kept shifting. Gradually, the night gradually came, and the battle was still raging outside. This time, the monsters dispatched by the Monster Association simply exceeded the imagination of the Hero Association. Not only sent many dragon-level monsters to entangle the S-level heroes. It even sent many ghost-level monsters to attack those ordinary people. Even buildings in cities, and in the location of a martial arts school. Bang Ji-yu stood quietly in the martial arts hall, with no expression on his old face. In Bangu's hand, there was still traces of bright red blood. Obviously, during the day, Bangu also killed many monsters. But Bangu's combat power, although terrifying, obviously couldn't be sustained if he wanted to. After all, Bang Ji-yu is still old. So, in the evening, Bangu returned to his martial arts gym. Perhaps because of a feeling in his heart, Bangu stood in the small courtyard of the martial arts hall. Looking at the sun that has set on the sky, and the crescent moon that reappeared above the night. A faint look of nostalgia began to appear on the old face. Tell me, if you didn't go out at the beginning, it would be great. Bangu's old voice slowly resounded in the small courtyard of the martial arts hall. Hey, if I don't go out, I'm afraid you won't be able to join the Heroes Association, sir. An evil voice sounded, and Bangu looked slowly. In a shadow. A young man with silver hair walked out gently with his hands behind his back. His upper body is extremely majestic, and it has perfect muscle lines, which are outlined. The eyes, like a hungry wolf, are full of sharp light. If ordinary people were stared at by this gaze, they might be scared to pee directly. But who is Bang Ji-yu? Bangu is the third-ranked existence among S-class heroes. There was no expression on the old face, just quietly looking at the silver-haired young man in front of him. After a long time, Bangu sighed slowly. Today, you shouldn't have come. Hungry Wolf frowned slightly, and then said lightly. Only today is the struggle between the Hero Association and the Monster Association, so many heroes and monsters appear in the group. Teacher, don't you know that I'm a human weirdo? The voice of the Hungry Wolf was extremely low. He stuck out his tongue and licked his lips lightly. A wicked smile appeared. On such a day, Tuan is suitable for me. Bangu closed his eyes gently. But this way, you have a greater chance of accidents. An accident. Hungry Wolf seemed to be caught by what Bangu said, and suddenly became crazy. Is there an accident? The face of the Hungry Wolf began to become distorted. Teacher, you may not know, go down today. I just got rid of the venerable Vest and the metal bat. The Hungry Wolf stretched out his palm, and there were streaks of bloodline on the sharp nails. I have to say, the taste of an S-class hero is really good. Hungry Wolf talked on his own, as if he was still caught in the previous carnival. Bangu couldn't help frowning. He didn't want to see Hungry Wolf like this. In his heart, he still hoped that Hungry Wolf could turn his back on the shore. Therefore, the first time he saw the Hungry Wolf, Bangu didn't make a move, but looked at the Hungry Wolf quietly. And in a location that neither of them knew. Suyu stood quietly in the shadows. It was pitch black, as if it directly covered Suyu's white combat uniform. Even Bang Ji-yu, the third-ranked S-class hero, didn't find Suyu's existence. Suyu stroked his chin. Hey guys, scoop news. Although Suyu knew that Bangu didn't hate Hungry Wolves very much. But it stands to reason that when he heard the Hungry Wolf say that he had defeated the Venerable Vest and the Metal Club, Bangu should have shot down the Hungry Wolf. But Bang Ji-yu didn't. Instead, he chose to remain silent. Perhaps, Bangu still has guilt for the Hungry Wolf in his heart. But obviously, hungry wolves don't like this. The Hungry Wolf looked at Bangu's expression indifferently, and said coldly, "Teacher, please put away your hypocritical expression, please." The Hungry Wolf suddenly approached, looked at Bang Qian Liao Gu's face, and could clearly see even a trace of hair on Bang Gu's face. "Teacher, do you know that your appearance makes me very sick? Please don't stand on a high place, fake mercy." Hungry Wolf kept talking. The speed of speech also began to accelerate continuously with the excitement of Hungry Wolf. "Do you think that those so-called heroes will let me go if I surrender myself? They insist on justice, but they don't know that everything they do has nothing to do with justice. They are just for the sense of honor in their hearts." Hungry Wolf sneered. Bangu's expression didn't change at all. It seemed that the Hungry Wolf would have expected to say that. Bangu looked at the Hungry Wolf deeply, then sighed and said, "After so many years, you are still like this. Forget it." Bangu's expression became serious. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if there was a dangerous aura bursting out from Bangu's body. Hungry Wolf's fine hairs stood up immediately. It seemed that there was an extremely dangerous fluctuation bursting out from Bangu's body. And the target is the Hungry Wolf. The Hungry Wolf's body exploded back. He looked at his teacher solemnly. Immediately, a ferocious smile began to appear on his face. "Forget it, let me have a taste of what it's like to be a teacher." After saying that, the Hungry Wolf shot out. One after another paw prints cut across the space. With an extremely sharp aura, it seems that even the space is directly cut through. However, in this regard, Bang Ji-yu only took a light shot. A palm landed on the Hungry Wolf's chest, and with a slight push of force, the Hungry Wolf's body was pushed back. The Hungry Wolf retreated more than 10 steps, and finally stabilized his body. However, there was no abandonment on Wolf's face. Some are just that crazy expression. The whole person seemed to start to get excited. Bangu's face was extremely indifferent. There is not even any fluctuation in the cloudy eyes. Yes, just a little bit of helplessness. "Well, whatever, it's better to let you suffer a little bit today than to meet a strong enemy in the future." Bangu's faint voice sounded. Then, a touch of light blue energy began to float above Bangu's wrist. At the moment when this energy appeared, Bangu's offensive suddenly became fierce. Even the Hungry Wolves who had cheered up couldn't react. Su Yu on the side smiled lightly. It is indeed the third existence among S-class heroes. Such a terrifying attack. Even if Su Yu faced it, he still had to take it seriously. After all, although Su Yu's flowing water breaking rock fist was copied from Bang Tong. That is the purest flowing water breaking rock fist. But Bangu's power is still something that Su Yu can't copy. Although the physical body has begun to become weak, where is Bangu's strength? It's just possible that, on top of staying power, it becomes impossible. Soon, the Hungry Wolf was directly cornered by Bangu's fist. A series of hideous scars had already begun to appear on his body. It was all directly punched out by Bangu's fierce fist light. Drops of blood flowed from the Hungry Wolf's body. Soon, the Hungry Wolf began to show a little bit of retreat. "Do you know that you are invincible? It's good, so that when you encounter someone you can't beat, you will die directly." A smile began to appear on Bangu's face. Hungry Wolf tried his best to beat Bangu back with a punch, then jumped out and left the martial arts hall. Seeing this scene, Bangu's old face also began to show a trace of smile. "Not bad. Yeah, not bad." Su Yu came out slowly and looked at Bang Ji-yu quietly. Bangu's body froze slightly. He turned around, looked at Su Yu who suddenly appeared, and couldn't help closing his eyes. "Did you see it all?" Bangu's voice was a little helpless. Su Yu smiled. The silver moonlight swayed down gently, and shone on Su Yu's white combat uniform, which seemed a little detached. "I won't tell you what to say." Su Yu looked at Bang Ji-yu with a smile. Bangu looked at Su Yu in surprise. Obviously he didn't expect Su Yu to choose to hide it for himself. "Why?" Bangu was puzzled. Su Yu smiled lightly and said, "Because, it has nothing to do with me. Because, it has nothing to do with me." Suyu held the back of his head, quietly looking at the old man in front of him. Bangu's pupils couldn't help shaking slightly. He suddenly looked at the young man in front of him, and suddenly realized that he seemed to be unable to see through the young man in front of him. There seemed to be a faint layer of mist on the body of this young man in white combat uniform, surrounding the young man's body. The silver moon descended from the sky and landed on the bodies of Suyu and Bang Ji-yu. It's like forming a thin gauze. Suyu leaned against the wall, looking at the direction in which the hungry wolf was fleeing, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. Hungry wolf, he is actually a good person. Bangu's body trembled slightly and fell silent. After a long time, Bangu looked at Suyu, and he could vaguely feel a little bit of relaxation in the old voice. If there were more people like you, the Heroes Association wouldn't be like this. Already no. Suyu's eyes narrowed slightly. If I remember correctly, the existence of the Heroes Association will be directly divided after a period of time. It directly became two associations. And Bangu said such words at this time. It seems that this old man seems to know everything. It's just, this old man never said anything. The corners of Suyu's mouth rose slightly. Things got more interesting, but the eyes of Suyu and Bangu looked at the same direction at the same time. Where, endless gunpowder smoke suddenly exploded. The tall buildings collapsed in an instant. Accompanied by bursts of flames soaring into the sky, like a fire snake, it swept out in an instant. An extremely terrifying energy erupted. Boom. The whole ground seemed to be trembling. Indistinctly, one after another roars could even be heard. Beep beep. Suddenly, the mobile phones belonging to the Heroes Association on Bang Ji-yu and Suyu rang. A dragon-level monster appears in Z City, Deep Poseidon. Currently, the sexy prisoner of the S-level hero has been defeated by Deep Poseidon. The S-level hero Genos is fighting with Deep Poseidon. Nearby, if there are heroes above A level, please hurry to help them. A series of hurried voices came from the mobile phone. Suyu's eyes narrowed slightly. Deep Poseidon. This is a real dragon-level monster. If I remember correctly, Genos and the sexy prisoner are not opponents of Shen Poseidon at all. Suyu stood up, looked at Bangu, and healed lightly. Okay, old man, I won't tell you about your matter. Now, the crisis in City Z has not been resolved. Does the old man still want to watch? This doesn't look like you at all. Suyu's faint voice sounded, looking at Bangu. On Bangu's old face, there was also a hint of sternness. Don't worry, the hungry wolf is gone, and I didn't shoot the goal, so don't worry about the future. This Deep Poseidon, I want to see, what kind of strength does it have, dare to be so presumptuous in City Z. Although Bangu is old, his voice is still extremely firm. Suyu shook his head and said, Old man, leave Poseidon to me, and the other monsters are yours. The corners of Suyu's mouth curled up slightly. Afterwards, the figure instantly turned into streaks of yellow lightning, and shot out suddenly. With his hands behind his back, Bangu stood quietly, looking at the dark night. Suddenly, a drop of rain fell gently on Bangu's face. A coolness stirred Bangu's heartstrings. It is going to rain. In City Z, a dark green figure stood on the street. All around are panicked crowds. That dark green figure stood on the street, and there seemed to be an extremely terrifying wave of energy in his body. Even the surrounding air seemed to start to fluctuate slightly. Immediately afterwards, a burst of fire burst out instantly. Like a ferocious fire dragon, it roared and swept out, abruptly bombarding the dark green figure's body surface. But even such a terrifying flame landed on that dark green figure. However, even though the flames swept out and turned into storms, they couldn't hurt the dark green figure at all. Small skills, you also want to fight with me? The dark green figure grinned grimly, and wriggled its huge fists. It seems to be carrying a terrifying energy, sweeping out. In an instant, the fist fell in an instant. And in front of the dark green figure, there was a mechanical figure, which flickered continuously. His eyes were even more flickering with bursts of orange light. The red engine exploded with extremely terrifying energy, fluctuating. Suddenly, it exploded instantly. Boom! Endless roars exploded. However, that dark green figure was just a punch. It was a simple punch that landed directly on the robot's face. A powerful force, even a machine, cannot stop Jin. The face split open in an instant. A series of hideous openings opened. Boom! The robot spun several times in midair before falling heavily to the ground. There were bursts of gunpowder smoke. Genos. Why isn't even Genos, who is an S-class hero, a match for this monster in front of him? On the side, the panicked crowd began to panic. There was a look of fear in their eyes. The footsteps are constantly retreating. Genos lay crippled among the ruins, with one eye directly blown out. You can even see wisps of cooking smoke coming out of Yano's face. He raised his head with difficulty, looking at the deep Poseidon in front of him. This monster with dragon-level strength is simply not something he can resist. Even if he is already an S-class hero. And on the other ruins, the same sexy prisoner who is an S-class hero is also lying there. Like a statue, there are scars all over the body. Blood instantly soaked the entire ground. Could it be, are we really hopeless? An ordinary man said in a trembling voice. Panic began to spread bit by bit in everyone's hearts. They looked at the night helplessly, but above the night, there was only the cold moonlight. The moonlight fell down, making it look extraordinarily bleak. Everyone couldn't help but shuddered, looking at the overwhelming deep Poseidon in front of you. More and more fear. Deep Poseidon laughed maniacally. Gia, there are no heroes to save you, now, this is the territory of our monster association. Deep Poseidon's sharp voice resounded. Who said there are no heroes? A panting voice came from behind. All I saw was a young man wearing a green hat, riding a bicycle, galloping forward. His body was already full of scars. However, in the eyes, there was a determined look. Until I'm down, you can't touch those people. The youth shouted out. It seems that he is strengthening his inner belief. Because I'm a hero. Sea-level heroes, undocumented knights, join us. The young man roared hysterically, his voice sonorous and powerful. But Deep Poseidon just watched the undocumented knight silently. Then, with a slap, he slapped him directly. Although the undocumented knight is said to be a hero, he is only slightly stronger than ordinary people. It's just a C-level hero, and it can't even meet the minimum requirements for a B-level hero. Facing Shen Poseidon, who is a dragon-level monster, it is already very good to be able to explode with such momentum. However, the courage is commendable, and if the strength is not enough, it will only be hanged and beaten. Boom! Without any accidents, the undocumented knight was directly hit by Shen Poseidon's punch, and his whole body, like a kite with a broken string, wobbled and fell to the ground. Even the ground was punched out of a huge pit by Poseidon's fist. The undocumented knight was lying in the deep pit, extremely weak, but his eyes remained firm. While the mouth kept bleeding, it was also difficult to speak. Advertisement. As long as I don't die, you can never get close to them. His voice was weak, as if he was about to die at any moment. But the sonorous and powerful words in his mouth, with the firm belief of the undocumented knight, still infected many witches. This guy. On one of the ruins, Genos looked at the undocumented knight lying on the ground, bleeding, and something cold in his heart seemed to be touched. Undocumented rider. Suddenly, I didn't know who it was, and shouted. Immediately afterwards, countless panicked crowds also joined the shouting team one after another. Undocumented rider. Undocumented rider. The voice became higher and higher, as if the panic brought to them by Deep Poseidon before had gradually disappeared at this time. Hearing these words, a smile gradually appeared on the face of the undocumented knight. Difficult, supporting himself to get up, trembling his whole body, Heng was just like that bloody man, with blood flowing everywhere. But it still didn't hinder the undocumented knight's resolute gaze. He stared at Shen Poseidon with extremely sharp eyes, and suddenly let out a cry. I am the #1 hero of sea level, the undocumented knight. Monsters don't want to hurt the masses in the slightest in front of me. Shen Poseidon stared at the undocumented knight's gaze, and couldn't help but take a step back. For some reason, this man's gaze made the Lord of the Deep Sea feel a little bit of shock. Immediately, Deep Poseidon's face revealed a trace of unsightliness. I am a dragon-level monster, and I was frightened by a small sea-level hero. Immediately, an expression of embarrassment and anger appeared on his face. Damn it, I want you dead. Shen Poseidon's sharp sound exploded, and it seemed that there was a terrifying energy, which began to burst out from Shen Poseidon's body. The huge body burst out. It didn't even affect the speed of Deep Poseidon in the slightest. Suddenly, he rushed towards the undocumented knight. "Be careful, undocumented knight," someone exclaimed, reminding the undocumented knight like fear. However, the undocumented knight at this time, after resisting Shen Poseidon's punch, has reached the end of the road. You know, even an A-level hero wouldn't dare to take a punch from Poseidon. And the undocumented knight is just a small C-level hero. The undocumented knight quietly closed his eyes. "Perhaps, you're going to die." The undocumented knight spoke softly. "But there is no fear in my heart, there is just a trace of unwillingness. I can't even protect these people. However, you have to step over his corpse." However, near the face, there were only strong winds coming from one after another, and there was no other feeling at all. The undocumented knight opened his eyes with some doubts, and immediately his pupils trembled slightly. In front of the undocumented knight, a robot with a broken arm appeared in front of him at some point. There was only one-eyed Genos left, and the engine behind him exploded with terrifying fluctuations. It is even possible to hear the sound of parts collapsing in Genos' body. Crack! The crisp sound exploded. Pieces of iron body fall off. Genos. The undocumented knight froze for a moment, looking at the dilapidated Genos, his heart couldn't help shaking. The body of the undocumented knight trembled slightly. "If it were me, if I had such a powerful force, perhaps, it wouldn't be like this." The undocumented rider let out impotent rage. Kneeling on the ground, fists, constantly bombarding the ground. The fist, which was already bleeding from the beginning, was also cracked one after another as the undocumented knight continued to bombard the ground. On the fist, has become bloody. Vaguely, one could still see the white bones emerging from the bloody fist of the undocumented knight. A slight smile appeared on the corner of Janos' mouth. "How could I let you stand in front before I completely fell down? I'm an S-class hero, Genos, who is rank 17. Drink." Genos roared, and the engine in his body seemed to have been activated to ultimate. The engine behind it burst out bursts of flames, and the temperature of ultimate even continuously burned the surrounding space. The surrounding space seemed to be distorted by the ultimate flames. Genos will deep Poseidon's fist and push forward. The whole body instantly soared into the air. The only remaining broken arm was to activate the launcher in an instant. Boom boom. In the endless roar, there are ultimate flames, which burn in an instant. Directly devour the huge body of deep Poseidon. On Janos's one eye, there seemed to be an unyielding flame, which began to burn. Blazing. Die. Genos knew who came out, surrounded by extremely terrifying fluctuations, and the flames seemed to hover out like a ferocious fire dragon. Janos' mechanical body began to burst into flames. Obviously, under the bombardment of such terrifying energy, Genos' body has also reached an unbearable point. Boom boom boom. The earth began to melt under such terrifying energy. It can be seen that the horror of this flame. However, zillily, on the sky, drops of rain began to fall, dripping on Genos' face. Genos' body, which was already somewhat broken, started to jump out with electric arcs at the moment when the rain fell. "God, are you helping me?" Genos smiled wryly, and his whole body fell directly from the sky. Boom! The smoke filled the air again. The undocumented knight looked at the scene in front of him, and couldn't help feeling a little bit cold in his heart. In the flames, sharp screams suddenly came out. The dark green Poseidon stepped out of the flames step by step, although it could be vaguely seen that some parts of Poseidon's body had begun to burn. But, as the rain fell deep on Poseidon's body, the surface of those shattered bodies began to heal bit by bit. "I said, from now on, this city will be taken over by people from our monster association." Deep Poseidon grinned. With the sound of laughter, the raindrops on the sky began to fall even bigger. Clatter. The rain was getting heavier and heavier, as if it wanted to extinguish the blazing heat in the hearts of this group of people. The falling of the raindrops seemed to form a foggy shield. No matter where Poseidon stood, his body began to expand bit by bit. It was originally only 2 or 3 meters in size, but when the rain fell, it swelled up and became even bigger. At least 4 or 5 meters in size. Gia, a group of heroes, none of them can fight. Deep Poseidon was bathed in rainwater, and its power was already extremely powerful. At this moment, it didn't know how much it had been improved. With every gesture of hand and foot, the power is terrifying, and it can even shatter the space. The surrounding air couldn't help but make harsh sounds. Deep Poseidon's eyes gradually fell on Genos. Then let's deal with you first. Deep Poseidon walked towards Genos step by step. Let him go. The undocumented knight roared and rushed over. However, as a sea-level hero, how could he be the opponent of Poseidon? Boom. It was still just a light slap, and Shen Poseidon was sent flying out. After a breath, Shen Poseidon came in front of Genos, with a ferocious face that seemed to be accompanied by Shen Poseidon's sinister smile. It became even more scary. The rain fell, gradually extinguishing the flames in Janos' eyes. It's over. Genos let out an exclamation lightly. 222. Mimi. Deep Poseidon kicks down hard. But when it landed in midair, Shen Poseidon's pupils couldn't help shrinking. 4. At the Deep Poseidon's feet, a white figure suddenly appeared. Who? Deep Poseidon roared. However, a terrifying force suddenly came from Deep Poseidon's feet. A terrifying force exploded instantly. It turned Shen Poseidon's body abruptly over. The one who killed you. A faint voice sounded from that white figure. Chapter 74. Advertisement. The one who killed you. The cold voice was like the dripping rain falling from the sky. Very cold. It was even possible to feel that there was an extremely terrifying killing intent, which bloomed in an instant. Genos sat slumped on the ground, looking at the white figure in front of him. The already dim eyes suddenly shot out an orange light. Brother Su Yu. The young man in white in front of him was Su Yu. Coming out of Bangu's Taoist temple, Su Yu rushed over without stopping. Looking at it now, it seems that it is not too late. Su Yu looked at Shen Poseidon indifferently in front of him. To be honest, Sunning didn't care much. Although Shen Poseidon's strength is not bad, it is even more terrifying than the explosive mountain that swallowed the monster's cells. But compared with Hao Ji and the reincarnated Phoenix Man, he is still much weaker. But, the improvement of the progress bar that a dragon-level monster can bring to Su Yu is still very good. So, Deep Poseidon, Su Yu is dead. The panicked crowd also noticed the sudden appearance of the young man in white, and immediately showed ecstatic expressions. It's Su Yu. See it. Su Yu is here. We're saved now. That's right. Su Yu is the 10th ranked existence among S-level heroes, and Su Bing smashed the meteorite that fell some time ago. Even if this monster already has dragon-level combat power, it's impossible to compete with Su Yu. Now, this monster is dead. Su Yu's record is very terrifying. Especially the last time the meteorite fell, it left an indelible impression on the hearts of many people. But at this moment, when many people began to panic in their hearts, the appearance of this white figure caused waves in the hearts of many people. Excited feeling. Even the undocumented knight lying in the ruins heard roars coming from his ears. He couldn't help but opened his eyes, looking at the white figure in front of him. A smile also began to overflow on his face. The S-class hero has finally arrived. After finishing speaking, the undocumented knight passed out directly. Having withstood the power of Poseidon's 2 punches, even an A-level hero would not be able to bear it. What's more, people like the undocumented knight are just C-level heroes. To be able to persist for so long is already very good. Su Yu seemed to have heard the words of the undocumented knight, and looked towards the position of the unlicensed knight. The eye sockets couldn't help but fluctuate. Aegea. Undocumented knight. The image of the unlicensed knight in the One Punch anime began to appear in Su Yu's mind. This is just a C-level hero, but he can use his mortal body to resist the Deep Poseidon, who is a dragon-level monster. This courage, even many superior heroes have never had it. It's a man. Su Yu whispered softly. Then his eyes fell on Genos behind him, with a hint of doubt. Aren't you with Saitama-sensei? Why are you the only one left here? Su Yu was a little puzzled. Obviously he went to the martial arts conference first, and Genos and Saitama were together. It stands to reason that with Saitama by his side, Genos wouldn't be in such a miserable situation. Genos was silent for a moment, then said, "Me and Saitama-sensei, lost." Su Yu, good guy, this FCK can get lost. If it is said that an S-level hero is lost with a C-level hero, I don't know how many people will be laughed at. Su Yu couldn't help but shook his head, and looked at the dark green monster that was 4 or 5 meters long in front of him. He is staring at himself eagerly. The corner of Su Yu's mouth outlined a slight arc. Did I let you see it? The voice fell, and the terrifying power exploded in an instant. At the same time, on a street in Z City, a bald young man in yellow clothes and a white cloak was walking through the broken streets. Where did that guy Genos go? The bald head scratched his incomparably shiny head, carefully observing the surroundings. This bald young man is obviously Saitama, who got lost with Genos. And in a corner, there was a monster hiding in the darkness, its scarlet eyes fixed on Saitama firmly. Gia, I didn't expect that there would be a single hero. As soon as the voice fell, a black shadow burst out instantly, and cold lights emerged between the sky and the earth. Boom! Saitama punched the black shadow with a blank face. The terrifying power exploded in an instant. Directly blast the black shadow to pieces. It turned into a puddle of meat and fell to the ground. With no expression on Saitama's face, he continued walking toward the depths. Hey, I clearly remember that Genos got lost from here. Saitama looked around suspiciously. In front of him, suddenly there was a burly figure, walking out slowly. On his face, there was a hideous scar. He stared fixedly at Saitama. A terrifying sense of oppression emanated from the whole body. The body has bursting muscles, and with a body that is 2 meters long, it makes people shudder. Saitama raised his head and looked at the strong man with a trace of bewilderment on his face. What do you want to do? Boom! On the entire field, waves of storms were rolled up. Accompanied by bursts of murmurs, there was an instant explosion. 8 inner gates, Jingmun, open. A deep voice sounded slowly. In an instant, a yellow lightning burst out instantly. The speed is so fast that even the Deep Poseidon can't see clearly. You know, Shen Poseidon is a real dragon monster. Even some S-level heroes cannot be opponents of Deep Poseidon. However, Suyu's speed even surpassed Flash. Among all the S-level heroes, apart from the Blast who has never met, I am afraid that there is really no one who can match Suyu's speed. Although the second-ranked Tornado is powerful, it cannot compare to Suyu in terms of speed. It can be said that in the One-Punch Forbidden area, Suyu's speed has reached a peak level. Except for Saitama and Blast, no one's speed can match Suyu. So, yellow lightning, madness swept out. Even the falling raindrops were evaporated by the streaks of yellow lightning. Clouds of white mist continuously emerged from the entire field. It's all evaporated raindrops. Deep Poseidon's pupils couldn't help trembling a bit. Immediately, his complexion became serious. This person's speed, so fast. Deep on Poseidon's cheek, a drop of sweat fell. Couldn't help swallowing. Suddenly, in Deep Poseidon's pupils, a yellow lightning bolt approached instantly. The speed was so fast that in the blink of an eye, a white figure appeared directly in front of Shen Poseidon. Then, a huge fist approached instantly. A strong storm instantly exploded above the fist. What a terrifying power! Deep Poseidon exclaimed. He wanted to resist, but was shocked to find that the speed of that fist was too fast. Before Shen Poseidon's arm raised his head, Suyu's fist had already landed on Shen Poseidon's chest. After receiving the blessing of Jingmun, Suyu's strength has temporarily reached the level of a 7-star warrior master. Like a bazooka, it blasted out in an instant. Superalloy bazooka. One punch kills. Boom, accompanied by bursts of muffled noise. Deep in Poseidon's body, he retreated instantly. Suyu punched him abruptly, sending him flying tens of meters away, until he hit a building before barely stopping. However, which building also directly collapsed as Shen Poseidon's body hit it. Boom, the gravel fell, swallowing Poseidon's body directly. Suyu stood quietly on the spot, looking at the ruins. On the progress bar of the ability to break the limit, there is no skyrocketing, which shows Deep Poseidon isn't dead yet. Suyu couldn't help raising his head and looked towards the night. Drops of water dripped down and fell to the ground. Is it because of the weather? In Suyu's mind, the description about Shen Poseidon was mobilized. Advertisement. Deep Poseidon is able to grow to a strength comparable to that of a hero when he is in the water. Although it is not in the lake, but relying on the rain, it still has a powerful Lawang. Therefore, Suyu's punch did not kill Shen Poseidon. Not surprisingly, the gravel began to break away. Shen Poseidon's huge body suddenly rushed out. His chest was already bloody. But, as the rain fell, deep in Poseidon's chest, healing began. Even the new skin gradually grew out. Recovered. When the crowd saw this scene, they couldn't help but worry immediately. This monster is too powerful, why can it heal after receiving such serious injuries? Tsuyu, isn't it the opponent of this monster? Some people started muttering. Genos looked at the group of people, couldn't help frowning, and wanted to explain to Tsuyu, but found that the parts in his body seemed to be unable to support him to continue speaking. He could only quietly watch the battle in front of him. Poseidon's complexion was extremely dark, and he stared at Tsuyu with crazy eyes. Tsuyu. Deep Poseidon let out a sharp growl. Deep Poseidon's pupils, at this moment, directly turned scarlet. The body burst out, wrapped in extremely terrifying power, the huge arm whipped out in an instant, and slapped directly towards Tsuyu's face. Boom boom. The surrounding space couldn't help but let out Yuan Ming. However, the Sharingan in Tsuyu's eyes just turned slightly. Then, the body twisted strangely in another direction. Directly avoided the punch of Shen Poseidon. How can it be? Deep Poseidon's pupils couldn't help shrinking. Although his speed is not as terrifying as Tsuyu's, but with the blessing of rain and relying on his own terrifying strength, he still has a speed comparable to the speed of sound. Moreover, facing the blockade of his own chi machine. To be able to escape. Even some S-class heroes can't do it, right? However, the reality is that Tsuyu did it easily. Tsuyu said lightly, the power just now can't kill you. So what's next? A pitch-black blade appeared in Tsuyu's hand. On the blade, there are cracks, as if it is a broken blade. Magic Saber Thousand Blades. The weapon from, Weapon. The weapon of the chief assassin of the Xuanwu Kingdom. Kill Terror. Thunder Breath. A faint thunder arc jumped on the thousand blades of the magic knife. In an instant, Tsuyu slashed at Shen Poseidon. Flash slash. Attack from Flash Flesh. The speed was so fast that even Subao was almost overwhelmed at the time. Not to mention the Deep Poseidon now. Although with the help of rainwater, Deep Poseidon's strength has improved a lot, but the speed has not improved much. So, the flashing flash fell, accompanied by the breath of thunder and the sharpness of the thousand blades of the magic knife. Cut off one of Shen Poseidon's arms abruptly. Ah! Deep Poseidon screamed. Dark green blood flowed from the severed arm. The drops fell on the ground, and even corroded the earth. Huge wound, constantly pushing. It seems that he wants to repair his injury, but Tsuyu will not give him this chance. In an instant, the body burst out. A streak of yellow lightning suddenly appeared between the sky and the earth. Buzz buzz. Indistinctly, one could even hear the sound of thunder exploding day after day. The whine of the air. Dao lights flickered out, constantly slashing Deep Poseidon's body. Flutter. Every knife cut deeply into Shen Poseidon's body. That terrifying defensive power, in front of the magic knife Shinran, is like paper. Nothing works. Coupled with the speed of Flash Flash, it is really too fast. Fast forward to Deep Poseidon is already starting to dazzle. He wanted to resist, but Tsuyu's attack appeared in his other direction in an instant. Such a dense attack has plunged Deep Siakoku into endless torment. Although each knife cannot kill Shen Poseidon completely, but the injury caused to Shen Poseidon by each knife is extremely terrifying. Even relying on the terrifying resilience brought by the rain, it is impossible to recover these dense scars in such a short period of time. Especially at the position of the broken arm, a little bit of new flesh had just grown, but it was ruthlessly chopped off by Tsuyu's blade again. Deep Poseidon was not given the slightest recovery time at all. After a few breaths, Tsuyu had slashed dozens of knives in a row. Every knife took away a lot of flesh and blood from Deep Poseidon. Another knife fell. Shen Poseidon's other arm was also cut off by Tsuyu's knife in an instant. Without the slightest hesitation, after several consecutive cuts, Shen Poseidon's two arms were cut off directly. Shen Poseidon without the arm has also become a monster without much threat. Tsuyu slowly put away the magic knife Thousand Blades. Looking at Shen Poseidon quietly, the corners of his mouth could not help but outline a slight arc. Good opponent, but not enough. As Tsuyu's voice fell, a faint blue energy began to surround Tsuyu's fists. Flowing water breaking rock fist. Skills from Silver Fang Bangu. Bang Gu, relying on this flowing water breaking rock fist, became the third existence among S-level heroes. But now, this trick is bloomed by sunning. It added a bit of terrifying power. Boom. Tsuyu's body burst out, fists falling down instantly. Pierced Deep Poseidon's chest straight. Boom. Shen Poseidon's huge body fell heavily to the ground. The rain fell, Deep Poseidon's wounds, but there was no strength left to mend them. And above the property bar that only Suyu can see, the progress bar for breaking the limit ability has increased slightly. It directly broke through the limit of 60. Soon. Suyu looked deeply at the progress bar. Soon, I will be able to fully learn the ability to break through the limitations. At that time, my strength will have a qualitative leap. Maybe, he can be directly promoted to a 7-star martial artist, and then rely on the 8 inner gates, and even reach the level of an 8-star Grand Master. After 7 stars, every realm is a qualitative leap. The strength of the 8-star Grand Master, even in the real world where Suyu is the existence of wind and water chestnut. It was Suyu's state of mind when he thought about going out by himself, and even reaching the 8-star level. They couldn't help but get excited. Woohoo, Suyu won. As expected of Suyu, even such a monster can be easily wiped out. I'm afraid Su is not just as simple as number 1. With the fall of Deep Poseidon, these people also gave out cheers. The gaze towards Suyu was full of fiery fluctuations. When they were desperate, the appearance of Suyu was like a ray of light shining into their dark hearts. Suyu ignored the gazes of these people, put the half-crippled Genos on his shoulders, and left directly. With the fall of the 2 dragon-level monsters, City Z gradually began to calm down. Although in some places, there are still some monsters wreaking havoc. But those monsters are not at the dragon level, and some A-level and B-level heroes can easily solve them. In the morning, wisps of sunlight fell. City Z, which had turned into a dead body, revived. Although many buildings have been turned into ruins during the battle, there are also many ordinary people who died in the attack last night. But with the rapid transfer of the Heroes Association, everything began to develop in a prosperous direction. Suyu sent Genos back to the doctor, and then returned to Saitama's house. I have to say that every time the monsters destroyed, they didn't bring any devastating blow to Saitama's house. The door was pushed open, and there was no sign of anyone. Suyu's brows couldn't help but frown. Strange, where did the teacher go? Advertisement. Strange, where did the teacher go? Suyu couldn't help but froze for a moment. Looking at the empty room, Suyu suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. Because, before, it was always with Saitama. But ever since Genos heard that he and Saitama were lost, Suyu suddenly discovered that Saitama was really gone. As if, just disappeared from the world. It made Suyu feel a little uncomfortable. However, Suyu didn't have any worries about Saitama in his heart. In this world, there seems to be no one who can hurt Saitama. Forget it. Suyu shook his head helplessly, closed the door, and started today's exercise. Although he already has the combat power of a 6-star warrior, he still needs to exercise every day. After all, with the ability to break the limit of more than 60 progress bars, relying on exercise, Suyu's improvement is also very scary. Suyu estimated that with a progress bar of more than 60, it would take at least a few months for him to be promoted to the 7-star Grand Master. After all, the gap between a 7-star master and a 6-star martial artist is terrifying. Suyu can only rely on the energy of the 8 inner gates to allow himself to have a 7-star combat power for a short time. You know, the damage to the body caused by the 8 inner gates is very terrifying. If the 8 gates can be fully opened, in Hokage, even Madara can be slammed with physical skills. Although Suyu can only open the level of the 6th gate now, the promotion is also very terrifying. But the 8 inner gates do too much harm to the body. Even a ninja-like guy who specializes in physical arts, if he opens the 8 gates, he will only be disabled. Xiao Lizzie couldn't even open the 8th gate. This alone can explain the horror of 8 inner gates. In the small room, Suyu's upper body was bare, and the perfect muscle lines were outlined, which was incomparably perfect. Accompanied by Suyu's gentle breathing, today's exercise has begun again. At the same time, on a street, Saitama and a strong man pushing a bicycle walked on the street, and on the cradle of the bicycle, there were some vegetables. Saitama looked at the strong man and said with a smile, "This time, you are happy." There are scars on the face of the strong man. That scar looked like it had an extremely sharp blade that cut through his skin. King, the 6th ranked existence among S-level heroes. He is also known as the most powerful man on the surface of the earth. However, in this man's hand, he was holding a game disc. King looked at the game disc in his hand, with an excited smile on his face. Finally bought, Heartbeat Sister First Press Limited Edition. King held the game disc and said with a smile, "On the way home after buying the game, this heart-pounding feeling is really unbearable. I really want to go home and play games." King stared at the game disc in his hand. Saitama looked at the man helplessly. Although this man is the 6th-ranked existence among S-level heroes, he also has many records. But Saitama knows that this man's record, it's completely self-made. However, Saitama didn't pay too much attention to these. Therefore, the two have become good friends. Speaking of this game, is it so fun? Saitama looked at the game disc in King's hand, as if he was holding a baby, and showed curious eyes. King looked at Saitama suspiciously, as if he was looking at a person who was not in the same world as himself. "Saitama-kun, don't you know that I've been waiting for 3 years for this game?" "3 years? Do you know how I spent these 3 years?" King's fiery gaze made Saitama even more helpless. King said to himself, "Today, I must stay at home and finish this game." A ray of light burst out from King's eyes. There is nothing that can be happier than playing games. Saitama stared ahead and fell silent for a moment. "Well, maybe today you can't get what you want." The king stared at Saitama, a little unhappy. Saitama pointed to the front and said lightly, "That person may not want you to go back." All I saw was a huge robot standing in front of the two of them. On the huge metal body, bursts of metallic brilliance shone. Like white light, it shines so brightly. Just wherever he stands, there is an extremely terrifying sense of oppression, emanating from some metal robot. The appearance of the robot immediately set off waves of panic in the surrounding area. "Ah, a weirdo appeared. What's the matter? Hasn't the weirdo been completely repelled? Didn't so many weirdos die last night? What do these people do?" Many people began to flee. They dare not stay where they are. Fortunately, the target of the metal robot is not them, but Saitama and King in front of him. "I am G4, the machine god created by the organization. You are the S-class hero King, right? Today, I will kill you." Accompanied by bursts of mechanical sounds, a scarlet light burst out from G4's eyes. "Look, it's the king. The king is here." Someone discovered the existence of the king, and immediately slowed down his pace. King tightened his grip, and carefully placed the game disc in his hand into the cradle of the bicycle. He lowered his head and said in a low voice, "Knowing that I am the 6th king of S-level heroes, a person with the title of the strongest man on the surface, do you still dare to say that?" G4's eyes became scarlet even more. A round of metal sword blades appeared in G4's hands, flashing bursts of cold light. A burst of sharpness appeared in an instant. Accompanied by an extremely strong sense of oppression, it suddenly swept towards the king. G4's eyes were scarlet, and the mechanical sound resounded. "I said, I'm here to take your dog's life." A gust of wind came and knocked off the king's hat. But suddenly, there were bursts of strange sounds resounding. "What sound?" Someone raised doubts. "Don't you know it's the sound of the king's engine?" Hearing this sound means that the king has entered a fighting state. It is rumored that all the weirdos who heard this voice died. There was a look of excitement on the G4's metallic face. "Listen, this is my combat performance test too. In order to facilitate my collection of data, you'd better fight with all your might," G4 said to the king. King narrowed his eyes, staring at the metal robot. Is this guy a robot? By the way, what kind of force is an organization? But, King raised his head, looked at G4, and said calmly, "Yes, but can you let me go to the toilet first?" G4 froze for a moment. Immediately after hearing the king's voice sounded again. "It's very uncomfortable to fight while holding your shit. If you can't collect the data you want, you will be troubled, right?" G4 stared at King, was silent for a while, and then said, "Okay, I'll wait for you here for 10 minutes. Saying that, G4 pointed the sword in his hand at Saitama beside the king. "Every minute you come back every night, I will kill one person. The first person is the bald young man next to you. Understand?" With the sound of the metal robot G4, the surrounding crowd, even looking at the existence of the king, began to escape everywhere. King was silent for a while, looked at Saitama beside him, and couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, I don't want to come back. I said earlier that you were the first person to kill Saitama, so why not look for yourself? What the hell, his own record is completely made by Saitama. Don't care about yourself. King looked at Saitama beside him, was silent for a while, and then said solemnly. Saitama-kun, I'll leave it to you, if I don't come back. King looked at the surrounding crowd, then whispered in Saitama's ear. If I don't come back, you can help me solve it. Saitama said to the king with a smile. Go, I'll help you watch him. After hearing Saitama's words, the king breathed a sigh of relief. He quickly ran to the nearby toilet. Advertisement. A smile on his face. Maybe when I come back, Mr. Saitama, I'll get rid of this metal robot. On the street, it gradually became extremely quiet. G4 looked at Saitama, with a hint of doubt in his metal eyes. Why don't you run? G4 is still a robot after all, watching other people start to run away, but Saitama stands in front of him like a normal person. Motionless, like a piece of wood. Saitama scratched his bare head. Looking at G4 innocently, said, Didn't you say that the killing will start after 10 minutes? Now you won't do it again. G4 was silent for a while, so it makes sense. G4 looked at the time and said, There are still 8 minutes, the time is up, if the king has not come back, you will be the first to die. Are you scared? Saitama raised his head, stared at G4 expressionlessly, and said lightly. I'm not afraid, but I want to ask a question. Are you afraid? G4 froze for a moment, then laughed out loud. Afraid, but the dignified machine god, created to obliterate the existence of the king, do you think I will be afraid? G4 seemed to have heard some big joke. Looking at this tiny human in front of him, his eyes began to become cruel. 7 minutes to go. Saitama looked at the watch in his hand and remained silent. But all of this, in the eyes of G4, is completely fear. G4 laughed even louder. Gradually, the laughter began to weaken. The entire street gradually became quieter. Fallen leaves falling. Quietly fell to the ground. On the entire street, there is only the sound of G4. 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 1 minute. As time passed, an extremely terrifying murderous aura began to appear on the entire street. These murderous auras, as if they were about to condense into strands of essence, emerged in an instant. If it were some ordinary people, maybe they would all be suppressed by this extremely terrifying murderous aura, as if it would be difficult to breathe. However, Saitama is different. How could someone as nervous as Saitama care about such a terrifying murderous intent? Saitama also looked at the metal sword in G4's hand and flicked it curiously. Clang! The metal sword made a crisp sound. Boy, are you really not afraid of death? G4 felt that the kid in front of him seemed like a fool. No, G4 was about to say something, but all of a sudden, he heard crisp voices. Slap slap slap. This sound is like something is about to crack. G4 looked in a certain direction, and suddenly his metal eyes were about to widen. What are you doing? G4 roared. He saw that Saitama was lying on top of his metal sword, beating his sword blade constantly around his head. And the clear voices before that came from the metal sword in G4's hand impressively. What I saw, along with Saitama's knocking, on the metal sword, there were one after another tiny cracks, which began to emerge. Moreover, those small cracks are still continuously enlarged. Suddenly, card wipe, another sound exploded, and all I saw was that the metal sword in G4's hand exploded directly. Pieces of fragments fell gently on the ground, and sharp fragments could even leave the slightest trace on the ground. Saitama scratched his head, looked at G4 with some embarrassment and said, Sorry, I didn't know your sword is so fragile. Then what? How much money? I will pay. Saitama looks embarrassed at G4. G4's eyes widened directly. Looking at the broken blade, he fell into a mood of doubt. You know, even if some A-level heroes strike with all their strength, it is impossible to leave even the slightest trace on the blade of your own sword. This is why the organization let G4 come out to challenge the king. After all, King is the 7th-ranked existence among dollar-level heroes. To be able to reach such a point, it has a very terrifying combat power. Therefore, The equipment of G4 is very complete. Just like this metal sword. It was specially built for the king. But he didn't expect that during the period of time when the king was shitting, his metal sword would be opened violently. After being silent for a while, G4 suddenly flew into a rage. Ah, boy, do you know what you're doing? You angered Met God. I want you to die. G4 roared angrily, and with terrifying power, he punched Saitama directly. The speed is so fast that it can even reach the speed of sound. Even, the terrifying power above the fist caused the surrounding space to moan uncontrollably. It seemed that under this punch, everything would be annihilated. Boom, the fists fell and exploded with a roar. A cloud of dust was raised. The earth split apart in an instant with the terrifying power of G4. A huge deep pit was smashed abruptly. G4 slowly withdrew his fist, and the metal eyes shone with scarlet light. Now, it's a dead end. Start hunting the remaining 9. G4 just wanted to turn around. But he heard a calm voice behind him. Isn't it because you broke your sword? I'll pay for it. As for hitting me. G4's pupils couldn't help shrinking, and he turned around suddenly, but he saw it. Amidst the gunpowder smoke, a figure gradually came out. Impressively, it is Saitama. Saitama didn't have the slightest scar on his body. It seems that the previous punch did not leave the slightest trace on Saitama's body. How can it be? G4 lost its voice. Saitama looked at G4 indifferently, and said indifferently. You punched me, I punched you too, it's fair. Saying that, Saitama walked quickly towards G4. Didn't even listen to what G4 continued to say. Before, a punch blasted out. Above this punch, there is nothing fancy about it. Yes, it's just a fist containing Saitama's power, constantly magnified on G4's face. The terrifying suppressive force even temporarily short-circuited G4's electronic brain. In an instant, a punch blasted out. G4's huge body was blasted out of a huge hole abruptly. Boom, the terrifying roar exploded, and a powerful gust of wind even left a trace of dozens of meters on the ground. Saitama slowly withdrew his fist, looked at the robot in front of him, and sighed. It's still too weak. At this time, King walked out from that position without knowing it. He patted his palm and said with a smile. As expected of Kyu-kun, he is so powerful. King said appreciatively. Saitama looked at the king and smiled. You finished shitting, it's a pity, I was thinking of leaving this guy to you, but I didn't expect him to be so weak. Saying that, Saitama stroked his chin and said, by the way, if it's the king, I'm afraid he can get rid of this guy without punching. The corner of King's mouth twitched slightly, not knowing whether Saitama was praising himself or belittling himself. And at this moment, a rushing voice suddenly sounded from King's body. All S-level heroes, please go to Cydia immediately to attend the hero meeting. Say it again. Advertisement. All S-level heroes, please go to Cydia immediately to attend the hero meeting. Hearing this voice, King's face couldn't help becoming serious. Saitama also leaned over and asked, what's wrong? King explained with a serious expression on his face. Let all S-class heroes go to a meeting, this matter seems not so simple. Saitama stroked his chin. Can it only be an S-class hero? I want to see it too. King glanced at Saitama and said helplessly. Let's go, I'll take you to have a look. To be honest, King still has his own plans. After all, it is definitely not easy to get all the S-class heroes to attend the meeting. King would also feel more secure if Saitama was by his side. At Saitama's house, Tsuyu, who has just finished a day of exercise, has just finished taking a shower and is getting ready to come out. The mist reveals Tsuyu's perfect muscular lines. If any woman sees such a figure, she can't help but take a few more glances. Simply perfect body. It was carved on Tsuyu's body like a ghostly axe. It can be said that not only girls can't protect themselves, even some men can't help but envy the kind of figure. Today's exercise has improved Tsuyu's physical fitness by a few points. The previous Tsuyu had just stabilized his cultivation as a 6-star warrior. And with the progress bar of breaking the limit ability, it has increased to more than 60%. Improve even more. The effect of just one day's exercise has directly promoted Tsuyu's physical fitness to a full 6-star level. But that's all. Although the 6-star promotion is relatively fast, if you want to upgrade from the 6-star peak to the 7-star warrior master level, that part is the most difficult. Because this is equivalent to a qualitative leap. However, Sunning is not in a hurry. With the progress of the plot, he will definitely be able to increase his ability to break the limit to 100%. At that time, maybe it's time to be promoted to 7-star Grandmaster. Although the current combat power is not the strongest, it is still at the top level. Suddenly, there were hurried voices from the mobile phone on the table. All S-level heroes, please go to Cydia immediately to attend the hero meeting. Say it again. All S-level heroes, please go to Cydia immediately to attend the hero meeting. There was a trace of anxiety in the voice. Suyu's eyes couldn't help but narrow slightly. If it follows the plot of a punch in Suyu's mind. The memory of the S-class hero that was carried out at that time should be the words left by the prophet before his fall. In that discourse, it seemed to announce a major disaster for the earth. And that great disaster, to be honest, Sunning didn't know what it was. It might be Poros, it might be the Monster Association. But the final reason, to be honest, Suyu is not very clear. The only thing he knows is that, along with the prophecy of this prophet, the whole drama of One Punch Man. Love, everything started to get faster. Not only the arrival of aliens, but also those terrifying existences with the Monster Association. Elder Centipede, Monster King Orochi, Poros. These are all existences that can easily contend against many S-level heroes, and they also began to appear in people's vision along with the predictions of the prophet. And all this, totally inseparable from Saitama. Speaking of Saitama, Suyu couldn't help but glance around. Well, the guy isn't back yet. However, Suyu didn't bother to care about it anymore. Anyway, it's unlikely that anything will happen to that guy, and the only thing to worry about is those guys who are in trouble with Saitama. After packing up his things, Suyu walked directly towards City A. With Suyu's current speed, it is still very fast to rush from City Z to City A. After all, Subayo's speed exceeded 5 times the speed of sound. Although it cannot be sustained, there is no problem maintaining it at the speed of sound. In just 1 or 2 hours, Suyu came to the Heroes Association in City A. Here is the gathering point of the entire Heroes Association. Here, basically all S-level heroes have once sat here. It can be said that City A is the safest city in the entire One Punch Man plot. Even those members of the Monster Association dare not make casual moves here. Even if it's the Monster King Snake. Looking at the huge building in front of him, Suyu walked towards the building without any hesitation. As an S-level hero, Sunning doesn't even need a Heroes Association certificate anymore. Suyu's face is the best proof. After all, smashing the Meteorite, and beheading 2 dragon-level monsters in a row. Such a record, even compared with Bangu, is almost the same. In addition, the beheading of Phoenix Man was not reported by Bangu and Zombie Man. But even so, Suyu's fame has reached a fiery state. Even the uncle at the gate knows Suyu. Stepping into the gate of the Heroes Association, soon there was a beautiful young lady in uniform leading Suyu towards the meeting place. On the way, a pale young man looked at Suyu. There was a smile. It's just that, to anyone, the young man's smile looks extremely sinister. It's like a vampire staring at you. Suyu. The young man greeted Suyu. Suyu raised his head, glanced at it, and immediately smiled. So it's you. This person is the zombie man that Suyu was going to challenge before. However, because the zombie man really didn't want to fight, Sunning didn't complete the challenge. However, it doesn't matter. Suyu challenged heroes to copy their abilities. But in the end Suyu discovered that some natural abilities cannot be replicated by Sharingan. In short, Suyu also gradually gave up on this idea. Instead, focus on improving the progress bar. Moreover, the most important thing is that now Suyu's progress bar has broken through 60 and reached 70. Just after Suyu finished her workout today, the improvement of the progress bar brought about by a few points is a breakthrough. After reaching 70, the improvement brought to Suyu by the progress bar is even more terrifying. It can be said that it is completely possible to shorten the time for Suyu to break through as a 7-star warrior by at least half a month. If Suyu needed 2 or 3 months before, now Suyu will be able to break through successfully in 2 or more months at most. Of course, this is far from enough for Suyu. After all, Suyu's goal is to break through the 7-star warrior grandmaster after leaving One Punch Man's forbidden area. In reality, those ferocious beasts have coveted human cities for a long time. If there is no absolute strength, I am afraid it will be very difficult to protect yourself. But it's different when it comes to 7-star warrior grandmasters, at least they can guarantee their own safety. Even be able to enter those more advanced secret realms. As long as he enters, Suyu will be sure, and the promotion will be even faster. Therefore, the improvement of the progress bar is still very concerned. After saying hello to the zombie man, the two went together and walked towards the meeting place. Along the way, Suyu noticed that the zombie man's clothes seemed to be a little damaged, and he frowned slightly. "What's with your clothes?" The zombie man looked down, then smiled indifferently. "It's nothing, I just met a man on the road and stabbed me." Don't look at how easy the zombie man said, but Suyu is very clear that he can face such a scene calmly. I don't know how much mental endurance is. And if this psychological endurance wants to be trained to the level of a zombie man, I don't know what kind of tragic thing he will have to experience. Even Suyu couldn't help sighing. Without dwelling on this topic, Suyu asked, "Do you know why there is a meeting this time?" The zombie man scratched his head and said, "I don't know about this. After all, you also know that I live in that place, and in that place, what kind of news can I know? However, what I know is that every meeting of S-level heroes means that something difficult to solve has happened." The zombie man's voice is very soft, but the solemnity in his heart can also be heard from the zombie man's voice. Suyu nodded, and didn't pursue the matter deeply. Afterwards, one could see that at the end of the corridor, there was a huge portal quietly appearing there. The door is half open. Suyu couldn't help but pause. Squinting his eyes, he looked behind that portal. "What's wrong?" the zombie man couldn't help asking. Suyu said lightly, "There's an air machine aimed at me inside." Advertisement. The zombie man froze for a moment, then looked at the portal, and said with a strange expression, "Why don't I feel it?" Suyu said lightly, "That's because he didn't target you, but me." Accompanied by Suyu's voice, suddenly, there was a huge mechanical arm, which came out from behind the door, and rushed towards Suyu. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying energy burst out in an instant. It can be vaguely felt that there are bursts of piercing and sharp sounds in the surrounding air. A faint blue light emerged from the mechanical arms. The speed was so fast that one could even hear the faintly visible piercing sound. In an instant burst shot out. Suddenly, it was even closer to Suyu's face. Although the zombie man noticed it, when he wanted to remind Suyu, he realized it was already too late. However, Yinbao is not so easily defeated. One must know that even after turning around, Phoenix Man, Hero, and even Shen Poseidon are no match for Suyu. From this point alone, Suyu has surpassed many S-class heroes. A yellow lightning burst out from Suyu's eyes. Breath of thunder. Ong buzz. The surrounding space began to tremble slightly. Afterwards, Suyu's figure turned into a flash of yellow lightning and burst out in an instant. He directly grabbed the mechanical arm with one hand, accompanied by the explosion of Suyu's physical strength. Suddenly, that mechanical arm was shattered abruptly under Suyu's huge force. Card wipe. Suyu casually threw the robotic arm to the ground heavily. Even the ground was smashed into a huge deep hole by the mechanical arm. After Suyu looked at the door indifferently, there were streaks of cold light in his eyes, which suddenly appeared. "Why, dare not stand up?" Suyu's voice was extremely indifferent. In fact, anyone who is attacked suddenly is not in a very beautiful mood. Especially in such a sight, this is the Heroes Association, you must know that you are a real hero. And as a real hero, he was attacked in the Heroes Association. Such a thing is simply unreasonable. Hey, you really deserve to be a genius who is a genius warrior, and you can escape my attack so easily. Papa Papa, accompanied by bursts of crisp sounds. Then, it was possible to see a middle-aged man with eyes walking out with a gloomy expression. The figure of a middle-aged man is extremely thin. Suyu quietly looked at the middle-aged man in front of him, and said calmly, "Metal Knight." To be honest, Suyu didn't have a good impression of this so-called Metal Knight. This guy is simply a guy without any advantage. Although he is called a hero, to be honest, this guy is simply a very extreme person. It can be said that although sometimes it is to deal with monsters, the damage to ordinary people is also very large. For example, in order to deal with a ghost-level monster, Metal Knight can even ignore the life and death of the people next to him. Directly destroy those ordinary people together in his artillery fire. Of course, Suyu didn't really care about those people's lives. But it is absolutely impossible for Suyu to kill ordinary people just to kill a monster. That's the difference between the two. Suyu's eyes narrowed slightly. The zombie man on the side also looked at the Metal Knight unkindly. You know, when the Phoenix Man appeared at that time, the zombie man already regarded Suyu as his friend. The zombie man doesn't have so many friends, you is one of them. And the zombie man is very concerned about his friends. So, when Suyu was attacked by Metal Knight, the zombie man stood next to Suyu as a matter of course. The Metal Knight smiled faintly, but this smile looked extremely sinister to Suyu. Hey, everyone is a colleague, why don't we find a time and let me collect your data? Metal Knight looked at Suyu with eyes, as if looking at a perfect experimental product. In Suyu's hand, a dark black blade slowly emerged. On the blade, there are cracks and cracks. It looks like a broken blade. But, this is the magic knife 1000 blades. The magic knife 1000 blades instantly turned into 1000 fragments. Like the jet black chain, it was wrapped around Suyu's body. Unleash endless sharpness. In an instant, among the three of them, there seemed to be an extremely sharp aura that permeated the air. The entire aisle began to become dignified and depressing. Suddenly, a childish voice sounded. Hey, what are you doing? The three of them looked behind at the same time. Instead, he saw a child carrying a school bag and a lollipop hanging from his mouth. The child's eyes are extremely clear. It seems that there are no impurities. But when the three of them looked at the child, not only did they not show any relaxation on their faces, they even showed a trace of solemnity. This kid is not that simple. That's Tong Di. Regarding Emperor Tong, to be honest, Susie didn't know much about him. But I also know that even the reincarnated Phoenix Man died under Tongdi's big move in the end. Especially, Suyu's eyes gradually fell on the small school bag behind Tongdi. In this small school bag, there are weapons capable of killing dragon-level monsters. To be honest, in Suyu's opinion, Tongdi's combat power is definitely able to enter the top 5. In front of Emperor Tong, this so-called Metal Knight is nothing but scum. A slag who can only rely on transforming robots. It doesn't have much combat power in itself. Tongdi, the Metal Knight helped his eyes, an array of light flashed out from the Metal Knight's eyes. Tongdi looked at the three of them innocently and said curiously. About my son. As he spoke, he blinked his eyes along the way. Suyu looked at Emperor Tong and suddenly smiled. Said, it's nothing, it's just that some people want to get my idea, but their own strength doesn't allow it, so they're just complaining here. Metal Knight didn't get angry when he heard Suyu's words, but just smiled lightly. Yeah, isn't it that I have met a suitable target, and I am ready to collect data, so that I can have more combat power when facing monsters in the future. Who knows, other people simply don't want to. Sigh, I don't know how such a person became a hero. A trace of murderous intent flashed in Suyu's eyes. Such villains are what Suyu hates the most. Always stand at the highest point of morality and put a high hat on yourself. It's all about doing everything. And for such a person, the only way is to kill. It's just. You can't kill it now. Suyu thought about the plot afterward, and couldn't help laughing. There are still many opportunities in the future, don't you think? Metal Knight frowned slightly, not knowing what kind of opportunity Suyu was talking about. But this sentence can be regarded as a step. Metal Knight naturally wouldn't embarrass himself so much. Smiled. Yes, there are still many opportunities. The two looked at each other and couldn't help but smile. However, the opportunities in a population are not the same. Tongdi looked at the three of them suspiciously, then shrugged his shoulders and said, in that case, let's go in. With that said, he walked in first. Afterwards, Metal Knight took a deep look at Suyu. Mina also followed behind. The zombie man looked at Suyu worriedly. It's okay, let's go. Suyu patted the zombie man's shoulder and said with a smile. Then, the two walked in together. Behind the portal, there is an extremely large space, and in the center of the space, there is a huge dome. And around the circumference, there are extremely high-tech screens. Exudes a faint blue light. Suyu sat in his own seat, and then began to look at the other people. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe.